Hello, 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 everybody. Glad to have you here. Let me drop that music down to the back. Let me know if it's loud enough. If my audio is loud enough, I'll kind of keep that in the back. Kind of low. Let me know if that's loud enough. Audio is good. Thank you for that, I appreciate it. Glad to see everybody here. Thank you for anybody that hasn't been here before. My name's Matt. I go by Primal because of Primal Studies is the name of the channel. So that's why you kind of see that in the bottom corner for my name. But if you really want to know what it is, it's Matt. Nice to meet you. Glad to see you. And as that little banner says, please, please, everybody show a little bit of love for... Good. Thanks, Guns. Speaking of Uncle Guns, if everybody would show just a little bit of love for some of the greatest mods on YouTube, just because it's a small channel doesn't mean I don't have some of the best mods out there. So let them know that everything is going well, that you appreciate them, you appreciate you. You're doing all the good things, and I like to keep it fun and spicy around here. So as long as things aren't breaking TOS, I say go ahead and comment to your heart's content. And as Based was saying, yes, please consider hitting the like, subscribe, share, all those buttons. Help this get out to the YouTube universe. Let people know that this is a fun place to be and have good discussions and see if we can sort some of the mysteries of the universe out. I don't often find many of the answers, but I hope that maybe through some of these discussions that I can at least get some questions in your mind and maybe help you find the answers for yourself. Because I don't want to tell you what to think. I just want to ask you to think. So, what are we getting into tonight? I see some people. Let me give some shout outs. Based Oracle in the chat. Appreciate you. As he said, please hit the like button if you didn't already. Old Joe, good to see you. Thank you. Denizen, thank you for being here. Uncle Guns with the wrench, doing the thing as always. Appreciate you. Just trying to capture all the names. I saw the Raging Tomato pop by to say goodnight. Thank you for popping by. The whiskey, it was kind of a pre-blend thing. So not the norm. It's kind of a lower content. It's about, I think it was only like a 65 proof. So it was kind of more of a chill thing. So keeping it a little chill tonight. All right. So let's see what else. Who else we got in here? I saw Cynthia. Good to see you. Appreciate you checking out the stream. And if I haven't called your name, Marcus, good to see you. Appreciate you. Philip, good to see you. Appreciate you. Yeah. Say hello. This is a cool, welcoming, easygoing place. I want people to see your name in the chat. I want you to see other people's names. I want you to connect and talk with other people. Logical Spark, thank you for stopping in. This is honestly, whenever I do these streams, this is my favorite part, is I get to say hello to people, call out their names, make you feel welcome. I hope you feel welcome. I hope you feel like this is a place where you can come and bounce different ideas off of different people. I'm going to change this up a little bit because we're getting into the red in some of this conversation. We're going spicy. We're going to talk a little bit about religion tonight. We're going to talk about religion and why some people are more religious than others. When you were growing up, were you taken to church or temple or synagogue or whatever faith you may have practiced in your youth, if you practiced the faith at all? Was that because your parents drug you along? They just made you do it? Did you have some intrinsic idea of, hey, I want to go to XYZ religious celebration or practice because that was something you just picked up on your own? Was it taught to you by friends and family? I'm legit curious. I can tell you, me, from a personal level, it was something that my parents taught me, right? I grew up going to church every Sunday because that's what my parents did and that's where they took me and that's what we had going on. And then I kind of wondered about this question a little while ago. If my parents hadn't have done that, would I have come to that on my own? Or is that something I may have never even considered? Right? Was it nature or was it nurture? Or perhaps was it a little bit of both? And then people throughout their journey I know I've had this myself, and I'm sure you may have experienced this or have seen people in your life experience this journey, is it's kind of a bit of a roller coaster at times. Sometimes people that were very much into their faith end up kind of falling out of faith a little bit. And other people who didn't really believe in necessarily, they didn't believe in a particular faith or religion. They ended up finding religion later in life. So it piqued my interest of why are some people religious when others are not? So to help me on this journey tonight, a lot of times I end up doing these articles and reviews, kind of solo monologuing, but I thought this one would be fun to bring on a few different perspectives, because religion and faith, if you will, is something that is just so broad. And I think it's helpful to have a couple different viewpoints and inputs to share some different ideas and give some different perspectives, because yeah, I know some, but I don't know everything. But I think if we put together a couple people at least, we can kind of cover a decent amount of bases. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome up a couple folks you may know to the show here. So I'll bring them on up. So if you give them some thumbs in the chat, thumbs up or a little clappy or, you know, one of those happy symbols in the chat, let them know that you appreciate them. I'm going to bring up Based Oracle and I'm going to bring up iFi. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. I appreciate you.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm ready.
And audio seems good on my end. If everybody can hear Based Oracle and iFi in all the chats, please let us know that all the audio is coming in and that the music is too strong in the background.
Music down just a notch.
For you? All right.
It's competing with the talking, so there, that's better.
All right. Bass seemed okay for you?
Yeah, you good now.
Okay, cool. So yeah, what do you guys think? Before I actually pull up, said article, I'm kind of curious to hear on your perspective, just general shooting from the hip of religion and faith. Do you think it's a nature? Do you think it's a nurture? Where do you kind of fall on that? Base, since you're on the top row with me, I'll have you go first, and then iFi, I'll have you go second. So Base, what's your kind of take on it?
Cool. Yeah, so religion, a pretty broad topic, but I think we all know what it means. Like, we probably have a very similar reference point. With that said, I think that probably more in terms of nurture and less in terms of nature. Like, it may be within human nature to form tribes, cults, religion, whatever the case. But I think more so it's learned. People seem to stick with whatever religion they started with right from birth or whatever age that happened. And sometimes they change. I mean, I could go down a lot of rabbit holes from here, so maybe I'll leave it at that.
No, well said. How about you, iFi? What do you think? Kind of nature versus nurture, high level?
Long answer. The short version is nature, nurture, and free will, depending on what time period we're talking about. So for youngins, it's definitely nature. For toddlers and preteens, it's nurture. After teen and adult, it's all free will. In short.
No, I like it. I think that's a good answer in terms of just kind of seems like it hits from all angles potentially.
We can go into the details whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So with that being said, I have a couple articles prepped up, but the one I kind of highlighted and brought up to begin with, I'll just share it on the screen, and that way we can see it. And I glanced over it. I did not read it in total prior to this, because I like to kind of go into these with a little bit of surprise, if you will, or you know what I mean, like discovery as we go with it. So I'll share this up here, and let's see. Scroll up. All right. So let me see. Is everybody okay to see that on big enough on the screen? I'm going to drop this down a little bit. I'll blow
Yeah.
this up a little bit. Is that big enough, though?
Yeah, I can
know-
read it.
I know that's a question that you gentlemen never get asked, in your normal lives out there, but
Right.
I caught you with a sip just at that moment. I saw it. Bless you on that one. That was good. Bless you, right? All right. So, hey, Michael, good to see you. Appreciate you popping by, man. Appreciate you. So this is a bit of an older article, and when I say older, it's about 7 years old. Most of these articles, I don't know, in the scientific world at least, we like to say less than 5 years is good, less than 10 years is kind of required. That's been my take on it, at least. Anything older than 10 years is starting to get out of touch in a lot of regards. There are some things that just have universal and all-time appeal, but once a study or an article gets about 10 years dated, I start to look for something new. So this one's kind of on the border of that, but nonetheless, here's what I have. So this Andy Tix, PhD, he wrote this in December of 2017, The Psychology of Religion, Why Are Some People More Religious Than Others? As we were kind of saying, he also has a bit of the same thing. One of my first memories is from church. We always seem to arrive early enough to say the rosary, but this particular Sunday morning, my mom, brother, and I were late. We double timed it up the concrete stairs to heave open the metal doors of the traditional red brick Catholic building, only to find the sanctuary doors closed. Uh-oh. You done it effed up, AA Ron. You missed the cutoff time. No, I don't know. Funny side story. One of my most religious moments I ever had in my life, and I don't know if y'all can see it, and I'm not giving you the finger here, but if you can see my middle finger here and how it has a split down the middle of it, I don't know if that's able to come in so great on camera, but it's actually a scar that I received while I was in church. So funny little side story was way back when I was an altar boy, right? Because I was pretty into religion. I did all the things. And there was a particular weekend I was doing the service at our Catholic church. And funnily enough, my mom and dad were out of town, and it was my brother and I, and we were older. We were I was maybe 13 at the time, 14. My brother's 4 years older than me, so he was 17, 18. So they were out of town for the weekend. And we went to do this religious service. And when I got there, you always had to wear, if you were serving, you had to wear the gown, right? You had to wear the white robe as an altar boy or an attendant. And on that particular day, they didn't have any of my size. The size was actually one size bigger than what I would normally wear. Now, on any given day, that wouldn't be a problem. You wear a robe, it covers your whole body, you tie it up with a little rope, and one size being big isn't too big of a deal. But unlike other times, we started the procession from outside the church because it was a nice spring or early summer day. And we didn't always do that. We only did that during the summer when the weather was nice. So here I am with this big ass candle. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Catholic church, but in the Catholic church, we often have these big ass candles. You got two hands on it. It's this big ball, this big pole you're carrying. And we started walking up the concrete stairs to go into the church. Well, wouldn't you know it, that as I was taking a step up the stairs, what do you think I happened to step on? That was just a little bit too big. Happened to step on the edge of the gown. Down I go with the big old candle on fire, crashing into the ground to the concrete steps, split my finger wide open, and that's how I got this scar. Ended up having to leave and go get a couple stitches in my finger, with not my parents there, with my uncle and grandma being my parental chaperones for the day, that had to meet me in the ER with my older brother. And I got a couple stitches in my middle finger. So that was my FU to the church moment of my middle finger getting scarred and doing the thing. But I just thought that was kind of funny. Of one of my most profound religious memories that I ever had in church was splitting my finger open and bleeding all over the priest and having to go to the ER. So maybe that put me on a certain path. I don't know. But anyway.
Sounds like God was trying to tell you something.
I used to break my middle finger. I'd fractured it, I think, 2 or 3 times. So maybe it was similar but different. Wasn't at church.
Now, did you break it, or did somebody break it for you because you showed it to them?
No. It was basketball. There was just a few times I went to get it and middle finger stuck out just enough to get a hairline fracture.
Yep. Yeah, like you were saying, maybe the big G was trying to tell me something to stay out of his effing house or something. I don't know.
But seriously, on a side note, that will come up later when we talk about like a lot of people's first impressions can like traumatize them for life, and so obviously if you have like a severely negative experience like going to church or whatever, you may associate that with your religion or whatever. So that plays into human psychology as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And no, old Joe, I would, no, I'm not agnostic. I'm, if I had to label myself, I would say Christian. But I'm kind of not real big on those labels. I think those get messy at times. But if somebody was like, hey, give me a label, I would say Christian. But yeah. Anyways, I thought that was, it ticked in my brain, his little story of the doors being shut, and reminded me of, one of my more profound memories from church days. So anyway, we'll carry on here. It seemed we were not allowed entry because of our tardiness. So we were confined to a small, cold foyer filled with nothing to look at but posted advertisements for local business and 2 holy water stations. Being only 4 at the time, I quickly became bored. A hymn had started, and I snuck a peek through the closed passageway. The congregation was being led in song, "Here I am, Lord, is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me." Powerful words, I thought. And yet, I observed no sign of emotion among anyone in the church. Much of the congregation didn't even sing along. Have you all experienced that in any of maybe your religious partakings of you were in a building of worship, but people weren't worshiping?
Yeah, even when it's rituals and ceremonies, which are the whole purpose is to be worshiping. And so a lot of people can kind of look zombie dead-eyed while they're going through the motions. And so, yeah, I saw that a lot growing up myself as well.
Yeah, I guess I could agree. However, with the distinction of what exactly is worship, and I'm not trying to be pedantic, I'm just looking at, for instance, I look at praying much differently than I did when I was, growing up Catholic, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
what one person considers worship might not be to another. But if you're saying following the rules of worship per the religion, then I got you.
Yeah, and I guess maybe a better word would have been engaged. Maybe they were engaged in what was going on around them, as opposed to filling out their checkbook. You ever see Dogma, the old Jay and Silent Bob movie?
I think, but it's been too long. I'm not going to remember probably, but...
Did you ever see Dogma?
Yeah, saw that one.
So there was a scene, like the lead character, she was lamenting her loss of faith, basically, and she's sitting in church, and literally she's balancing her checkbook and talking about, this is the time of Sunday afternoon or morning that I balance my checkbook, something like that. So
it's the old Homer cliche where he's watching the football game while the preacher's giving the sermon or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Or just looking at your cell phone or whatever in modern times would be the equivalent.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, because I was going to say, that was before cell phones were really much of a thing. But anyway, the fact that I so clearly remember this incident reveals something about my strong religious and spiritual inclination. But the incident also raised a question for me that has become the focal point for much of my professional life. What explains why some people are more religious than others? And that was kind of the prompt of here tonight. So for the past 20 years, I have taught an undergraduate course in the psychology of religion and spirituality. Most of my students haven't had much exposure to the significant religious and spiritual diversity, so I often bring in 10 to 15 community members during the term to share their stories, often during interfaith panel discussions. That's something that growing up, I didn't have either. I didn't have much exposure to people of different faiths. I think I had one kid in my class that was Jewish. Everybody else was basically Christian or didn't practice a particular thing. But when I went into the military, that was very different and a very good experience for me to learn to try to appreciate other people's religious practices, whether it was Muslim or Hindu or agnostic or atheist or anything. Like, it gave me a different perspective. I don't know. Had you all had some exposure throughout your life to a variety pack, if you will?
Little bit. With that said, I was just thinking as you were talking about that is, you mentioned respecting, right? Having respect for other religions. I think that's fine. I mean, good, right? To be respectful of others type of thing. With that said, I was just thinking of some sort of irony within that respect paradigm. Looking at, I've noticed over the years there's been certain sects of religion, like I don't know exactly what they were, but let's say of Christianity, where they're trying to convince me to be one of them or to join their religion. And I think the irony is that although I'm not religious, I'm not, I don't believe in a sense that I don't want to be in a religion. With that said, I definitely believe in God, not agnostic. And so it's kind of interesting. It's sort of like, leave your beliefs to me for what we have because it's better. And meanwhile, I don't think that a lot of them would find it respectful if I came at that same angle to them.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I've never been what I would call like a preachy person, and I never liked people basically telling me, "Well, you're wrong because you do it. You're not doing it my way."
Right.
I never felt like that was a good way to win people over to your cause. I figured if it was something, if I was going to be an evangelical person and try to persuade people to join my faith, I would just show them what I was about and say, hey, if you want to be a part of this, then come be a part of it. I think that goes for a lot of things in life, whether that's dating or making friends or just being around people in general. If you try to like shame somebody into being part of your team, why the fuck are they going to want to be a part of your team?
Or shame somebody into not being a part of somebody else's team. And I'm sort of, moving into some micro YouTube stuff, right? Just in terms of certain people been like, oh, if you go on so-and-so's panel, then you're banned here type of shit.
Right. And I guess if it's like stuff that's like, oh, this person's a PDF file verified, or this person's like an objectively bad person, you're buddy with them, I kind of get that. But if it's hey, I don't agree with your opinion on something, and then I'm going to cast you out because of it, well, then that just shuts down productive dialogue. Like maybe the more you talk, the more perspective you get. And again, it's not that like somebody's going to convert you over to their team, but at least you can have a productive discussion.
Well, and here's the thing, and I do want this, I want to stay on track for what we're talking about here, but I think it's highly relatable in terms of, I kind of look at it that people like that, whether we're talking religion or sort of the microcosms of YouTube, that in a sense, ones who are doing that are not, they're not necessarily very grounded in themselves, self-belief, confidence, however you want to put that. And it's sort of maybe a fear, right? Like you were talking about shame, right? In terms of shaming friends into being friends, whatever it is. That'd sort of be similar, right? It's sort of coming from a place of fear. I'm afraid of what this person might say. And we're not talking about TOS, right? We're talking about in terms of having a genuine dialogue.
I agree, because if you're so, and take this for anything, to your point, it's very applicable across a wide thing. But let's use exercise, for example. Let's say I have a theory on exercise and you have a different theory, and we both have good results. Wouldn't it be silly to not hear about yours? And if I wasn't willing to hear yours, would it be because maybe I was doubting mine a little bit? If I'm so firmly rooted in my own belief, then shouldn't I have no problem kind of hearing your take?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that fear is a sickness. It's a disease in a sense, right? Because a lot of times it can stunt growth in that, to your point, maybe there is some more that I can learn. And I do think like this, by the way, maybe there is some more I can learn about exercise, whether it be efficiency towards getting to my goals or something to get me closer to my goals. And that might be a distinction in some of the religions, although I think that they overlap quite a bit, may be what one deems to get out of it, right? Mm-hmm. Which would be a distinction from God in a sense, or at least it could be, right? The church itself is not God.
Yeah, well said.
So I think it's time to introduce the third judge into this discussion. So this is exactly why this is the magic. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I was waiting till you girls were done braiding each other's hair. So, anyways, I'm going to be the opposite end of that spectrum, and so I understand the perspective that some people find it a major turnoff when it comes to the topic of religion, to have someone in the room saying black and white answers about this is right and that is wrong and that kind of language. But that does have quite a bit of merit to a good, productive conversation, because the problem with objective truths versus subjective truths is eventually some people are going to be wrong, and sometimes both parties are wrong, but sometimes one of them is right. And so that's the progress we're supposed to be looking for in all of our searches for truth. And so again, everything y'all just said, I'm pretty much the opposite. So I grew up in churches where it was expected that you would be ready for a serious debate at any time, even within your own church members. Not only outside people. Like obviously when you go visit a neighbor's church or whatever, or even a different religion. Like if you met a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu, whatever, out in the road, you were expected to give black and white answers and not, approach it with like the gray language of, I'm okay, you're okay, kumbaya, let's all just get along, and coexist on your little bumper sticker and stuff like that. And so, obviously there's pros and cons to approaching religion with that, frame of mind, because pros, you get right to the crux of the problems and you search for the ultimate truths in the black and white answers. But the cons is you're going to lose a lot of your audience along the way, because again, going back to human psychology, there are a lot of humans that just do not enjoy the exchange where someone is lecturing them and telling them they're wrong about XYZ. So that once again goes back to why so many people quit church to begin with. Sometimes it's just the preacher preaching a bland, sermon that's not directed at anyone, but that one person in the room feels like it's directed at them because every word's like, digging into their heart, and they're like, why are you attacking me personally? And stuff like that. And he's like, I was just giving a sermon. So, this will make this little exchange more fun, since you guys are coming more from the gray area and I'll be coming from the black and white. So we'll see how this unfolds.
Way to try to box us in before we even start. And for the record, you've yet to win a single religious debate with me, I-Fi.
I've won them all. I am the law.
All is in zero.
Good times. All right, let's carry on. So we talked a little bit about interfaith and exposure to different religious aspects, if you will. Through these presentations, it becomes quite obvious just how different people are in their approach to religion and spirituality, like we were just talking about. And it beckons us to consider why. One of the most common hypotheses made by panelists and students alike is non-religious people are more likely to process information analytically or logically, while religious people are more likely to rely on intuition or emotion. Thoughts on that, guys? So less religious people process stuff more analytically, and I'm just paraphrasing here, versus religious people are more into intuition or emotion. Kind of, what are your thoughts?
It's sort of overly simplistic, like in terms of if one has faith, one is believing what they can't see, so to speak, right? So it's sort of ingrained within religion, but then back to the word religion, from a faith standpoint, religion is absolutely not necessary.
But before I get too deep into this, this is one of my biggest thorns in my side throughout my whole history of philosophy and religion and politics. So I'm trying to condense it to just like a soundbite for you, but basically, I have been fighting against this claim since the beginning of my debates and exchanges because of that public persona that religious people are dumb because they use faith because they believe in things without evidence, and science people are smart because they own logic and reason and they know how to do math and shit like that. And so that's one of like the oldest, butthurt atheist, rebuttals to even starting a discussion about religion or science. And so, unfortunately, this even bleeds over into the religious communities. There are religious people that fall into these same tropes of, like certain religions are like super studious and good at debating and always use logic and reason, and other religions are just spiritual feelings and they don't even crack open a Bible or anything. It's just all about, feelings and emotions and, all that stuff. So yeah, we can get into that as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I know I was digging up some stuff, and this is kind of like a sidebar, or even like a little side journey or side quest maybe for another time. But I know I was sharing with you, we were talking about how the breakdown in churches on a ratio of men to women being somewhere in the ballpark. And again, this is just of the really quick, brief research I did, about a 2-to-1 ratio of women to men in church. And then is there a correlation then between this hypothesis and then the hypothesis that's out in some of these spaces of men rely more on analytics and women are more based on intuition and feeling out of emotions and whatnot? Do you think there's, something to go there?
Some correlation, sure. I think probably, because again, we have to go back to nurture and nature. Like for instance, it sounds like you could be saying, are women more predisposed, right? Like innately. And what I'm saying to that part is maybe. Well, if you think about being more communitarian, then that would probably be an entailment. So sure, or at least it could be one of many. Yeah. With that said, I don't know if that covers the learned behavior. But with that said, what sort of problem would one be attempting to solve with that question?
Right. Almost would it be then if let's just run with this logic, like from like a logic. Let's just assume, and this is a big assumption, but let's just say this is true. Would that mean that women are therefore more religious than men? If women are quote unquote more into their intuition and emotional capacities, then by that logic, would it also then be fair to say, if we're going to go with this, that women would be more religious?
No, because baked in there was faith versus religion, right? So really the question I think would be, do women have more faith? And I don't necessarily think so, but then we would get into how do we define faith. But back to the religion, your actual question, yeah, I would suppose yes, based on the communitarian aspect, right? The people aspect versus things.
Yeah.
I think it would be better phrased that women are more spiritual than religious, and men tend to be more religious than spiritual. And again, it goes back to that, yin yang of logic versus emotion and stuff like that, which that's kind of an old idea because in the modern times, that's not really, specific to just men or women. So that makes it a little more complicated.
Yep. And again, I just want everybody to be clear. We're not saying like this is a assumptive type thing of, in some of these spheres that people find themselves watching content in and that kind of stuff. These are some of the talking points that are out there. So I'm just kind of thought exploring a little bit.
Another point I wanted to make on that is if the sort of metric is defined by who shows up at church, again, that would point more towards religion, but nothing to do with faith. Well, it has something to do with it, but it's only part of the Venn diagram, per se.
Right, because faith and religion, while correlated, are not necessarily the same thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would argue, in fact, that a lot of people who claim to be, and that would get into the distinction of what is versus claims, but a lot of people who claim to be religious have seemed to me, from outside view, my perspective, some of them to be the least faith-bearing people I've ever met. In fact, if anything, it has seemed pragmatic. So really ancillary to the idea of faith or religion supposedly represents.
Yeah. I5, what do you think about that, faith versus religion?
Well, I always use the correct definition of faith, which always breaks up all the arguments. But so faith is the evidence of things unseen. It doesn't mean believing in things without evidence. And so once you get that out of the way, that completely changes the discussion. Going back to the women thing,
I reject that, by the way.
That's fine. I reject your rejection. So
Reject.
the objection, Your Honor, dismissed. So going back to the women thing, I had one more little thought lingering in my brain before I kick that off. So I think women appear to be more religious because of like the cultural impact. I think women are more interested in like the quality of their children's upbringing more than they are in the actual religion itself. So they probably see church as like an extracurricular activity that will give their children, you know, good role models or, you know, learn how to behave like good citizens or whatever.
Pragmaticism, really.
Yeah.
I just pointed out.
Exactly. But men tend to hone in more on the actual like logic and reason and dogma and doctrine and stuff like that, and that's why they get in such angry debates about stuff. And there's a lot of men that just don't have the time or energy for that, and that's why they just check out so quickly because, you know, they don't want to just like halfway kind of like, nah, you know, good enough. Let's just fake it till we make it. But so that's all I've got on the men and women thing.
Yeah, and I think it's worthy of its own topic at some point, because I think there's something definitely to that. If those numbers are true, where it's like a 2-to-1 ratio, all right, why is that? That seems like that's too much to just be a coincidence, right? That's my thought. So
then to get us back on track onto more importantly the topic of how faith plays a role in religion, that's the obvious answer. So when we're talking about metaphysical things, obviously we're not going to be talking about science or math or, you know, chemistry or physics or anything like that. So that's where a lot of men who tend to be, you know, logical and reasonable feel kind of like, you know, repelled by this idea of like talking about spiritual things or things that sound like emotions and feelings, even though it's really not. But I think it's more that impression that they get of the big picture more than the actual getting into it, but we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, I'll carry on here. Evidence has been building for this processing style hypothesis. In a 2011 study, participants assigned to write about a time they followed their intuition were, maybe surprisingly, more likely to believe in God afterward than those assigned to write about a time they carefully reasoned through a situation. All right. Along the same lines, a 2012 study found that participants assigned to view artwork depicting analytical thinking, Rodin's The Thinker, were less likely to believe in God than those assigned to view artwork with similar surface characteristics. Discobolus of Myron. I'm not big on famous art pieces, so I'm just gonna carry on through there unless you guys got something on it. I'll take that as a no. All right. Recent research that is getting a lot of press, however, paints a different picture. Scientists from the Universities of Coventry and Oxford tracked down pilgrims on the 500-mile Camino de Santiago in northern Spain to ask them about the strength of their religious and spiritual convictions and how long they had been on pilgrimage. The researcher then presented these pilgrims with a probability task where they could choose either a logical or gut feeling response. Neither strength of conviction nor time on pilgrims predicted logical or intuitive responses to the task. All right. So it basically said, hey, we did this one study and we found this thing, and then we did another study that basically countered that. Is that what I'm getting out of it?
I think it goes back to the give and take of the whole process, because you can't logic your way through religion, nor can you feel your way through it. So you have to have a little of both. It's a matter of balance.
Yeah.
My question is, I mean, my overarching question, which you probably already know, is what does the intent of the article seem to be?
Yeah, and that's the funny part is I didn't read all the way through it, so I'm curious to get to the summary piece, because usually in a summary piece they try to drive, like, usually somebody, I mean, once in a while you'll get a completely, I'm going to call it air quotes, completely objective article where they don't try to point you in a direction. But I would say 9 out of 10 studies or research articles or anything, they try to point you in a direction. They do. So I guess we'll get there.
And if you don't mind me pointing out, Primal, just my interpretation of the world in articles, right? Because I do read some myself. With that said, if 9 out of 10 you can see have an objective, that's one thing. That 1 out of 10, that may mean that the funnel is very slippery, right? Just meaning levels of chess. And by the way, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not saying nobody is objective. I'm just pointing out.
No, I think that's a great call out. The greatest trap is the trap you don't see.
Right.
I mean, like we talked about this, I think, on another thing. It was like the greatest cult is a cult you don't even know you're a part of. Like,
right. Yeah.
So, yep. Or what do they say? The devil's best trick was making man think he wasn't real.
Convincing the world he didn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yep. That's the best trap is the one you don't even know you're in. All right. In a follow-up study, an area of the brain devoted to analytical thinking, sometimes thought to be more active in religious skeptics, was stimulated in research participants. This had no overall effect on belief in God. So they tried to science it down and do some brain studies, apparently, and they found nothing conclusive, I guess. In science, this is what we call a failure to replicate. In other words, with different samples and methods, findings sometimes aren't consistent, which means it's not really proven then. It's more of just a theory than it's been proven. If you can't replicate results, then that's the whole scientific method, right? If you find something and you replicate it over and over, then you can say, okay, this has validity to it. But if you can't replicate something, then it might have just been
a fluke,
chance.
One-off.
Yeah, been chance. Yep. I can imagine an argument unfolding among my fellow psychologists of religion about how to interpret all this. Some might say they favor the processing style hypothesis because that research literature is more established, with the more recent research being merely an exception to the general pattern. Others might argue in favor of the more recent research because its methods are better, with a broader sample of people included and use more advanced technology. So essentially what they're saying is there's a split community on this idea of, hey, we've proved it in these studies, but then we had studies that were contrary to it. So everybody's kind of like, I don't know where we are, basically.
Yeah, even this article referencing, we found ways to improve their better studies. That doesn't mean shit to me. And I say that in terms of what they call better, I might call the opposite, right? Did they actually go into what is better, or they're just referencing it as that?
Yeah, they have various studies linked here. I'm going to guess it's something like sample size or more like specific measures that they put into them, but I haven't pulled up like the individual studies.
And not just to be a devil's advocate asshole, but even sample size as one variable doesn't mean that the other variable, well, constants are now variables, throwing it away.
Yeah, no, just because you have a big sample size doesn't make it a good study.
I'm just telling you how I think. This is how I interpret the shit.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good skepticism, in my opinion, because I do with like my professional job. There's a lot of stuff put into research articles and proving and burden of proof and all that. And 101 kind of thing is, yes, usually having a bigger sample size is a green flag, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's like a better study. It's a green flag to have more X's,
Right.
more X number. But you could have 1,000, but if it was a shitty study, it's a shitty study. So I could get 1,000, N or X's and put on a bullshit study and say, hey, we tested 1,000 people and 999 said this. Well, yeah, but I had already predisposed all of them to saying that to start with. So what kind of study was it?
Yeah.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That's scent of Jaguar, right? It comes with real bits of Jaguar. All right, let's see. So personally, when I see mixed feelings like this, my assumption is that even if there is an effect to be found, it is probably on the small side. In other words, even if processing style may be somehow involved, it may not be to the explanation for why some people are more religious than others. So what are better explanations? To your point, Based, I think we're getting to where they're going to try to drive home their points and their ideas. If I were to limit myself to 3 variables, all right, now we're getting to some like tangible what this person thinks. Based on all the research I know about the psychology of religion, this is what they'd be. First would be our genetic predispositions. Research supporting this shows that identical twins, even if raised apart, are considerably more similar in religious beliefs and activities than fraternal twins. In fact, the scientific consensus is that 30 to 50% of individuals' differences in religiousness is due to genetic factors, making it the single most powerful explanation. All right, what do you guys think about that?
I'm calling complete bullshit on that, but I'll let you guys go at it.
Yeah, I don't.
I'd like to hear from IFI instead of a cop out. Why do you think?
Because your eye color has no bearing whatsoever on whether or not your search for truth involves religion, the tool of metaphysical truth claims.
And I agree with you on that. I don't see any correlation just based on what I know, and I'm not a scientist.
The problem
seems like a reach.
The problem when they pull out bullshit quotes like that is it makes it sound like it's so overwhelmingly convincing that if we got identical twins and they proved to be both religious, even when they were raised separately, that's proof. That's all the evidence we need. Right. It was probably like 1 in a billion type data set, that had no bearing on reality whatsoever. But it's just retards that don't know how to research. That's all I can say about that.
Well, I don't know about the don't know how part. Maybe are purposely leading to a conclusion, but nonetheless, I agree with your point.
Oh yeah, they probably had a deadline, and their editor was like, get me something that sounds scientific by the end of the week, and so he just started typing up bullshit, and this is what came out of his typewriter.
Yeah, because I'd be really curious. Like, how often do you have genetically identical twins that are raised apart? Not very often. That's a subset of one thing already.
And how do you measure religiosity? Like, just because one of the twins was going through like one of his dark phases where he was like skeptical and rejecting everything doesn't mean he's a devil worshiper or whatever.
Right. Because then what? Then how do you all right, was there a chance that just because they were raised separately, they weren't raised in the same, they both weren't Christian, or they both weren't Muslim, or they both, what are the odds of identical twins being separated at birth and them also not being raised in a similar faith structure? I think the odds of that are like tiny. They're tiny.
Yeah,
it's a subset
I agree.
Of a subset.
Grasping at straws. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Anyways, what's the next variable? I'm more interested in the next two.
Yeah. Not that religiousness per se is inherited, but some of the personalities that may influence religiousness, such as openness, humility, or proneness to questioning and doubting, may be genetically predisposed in a way that influences us. Okay. Second would be a quote-unquote need for control. In one study, for example, scientists assigned individuals to either write about a recent positive event in which they either possessed self-control or in one which they didn't. Remarkably, individuals who were primed to think about their self-control were significantly less likely to believe in a controlling God afterward. So if you, and I'm extrapolating here, but those that had a more internal locus of control were more likely to say a lower involvement with God or a controlling God. Is that kind of what you guys are getting out of it?
Yeah, close enough. And more importantly, this goes back to the free will thing that I was talking about, which is absolutely the most important variable, which we can get into in detail in a minute, but we'll wait for the third one.
Yeah. Based?
Yeah, no, I'm good on that point.
Yeah, just for like a need to control. So if somebody feels that they're in control, then God is less involved. And if they feel like they're less in control, then God's more involved. That's kind of what I think.
Right. And that's the thing. There's probably 100 other similar points to that one that was made that we could go down. And that's why, the idea of, well, they didn't grow up in the same environment, even though they are genetically similar, doesn't mean that there weren't other similar variables that weren't considered during the the study.
And the only problem with this observation is this is where a lot of your typical psychologists will start going the route of trying to explain it through nurture And they'll say, well, the reason why this person suffers with control issues is because they grew up in a bad home where they were abused and blah, 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 blah. And so that's where I don't like it when they derail the thought that the free will of the individual is the most important variable. But yes, sure, their nurturing also played a role in the development of their free will. So that's fine and good. But that's when they start just overlapping them and confusing them. So I'll keep them separate for my discussion.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, we'll get to their third, or a slight spin off, and then we'll get to the third. I have an atheistic friend who jokes that if he knew that he was immediately going to die, he'd offer up a prayer just in case. Not that he would actually do this, but why would someone? When we lose control in our lives, we often turn to religion. When we have lots of personal control, we don't. And I saw that, a number of times throughout military stuff or other kind of stressful events, if you will. A lot of people in their hour of stress, if whatever that means to you, would perhaps reach out to a higher power and ask for either forgiveness for like their past offenses or for help in the current situation, or just, I don't know, to plead their case. I'm sure you all have seen similar things, whether it was somebody that maybe was highly religious or not really particularly religious at all. Does that kind of hold true for you guys? You've seen that?
Yeah, I don't have any wild swing points on that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. So to your point, I5, what's the third item? Third would be the groups with which we identify. By this, I mean family, community, and the broader culture. Research based on nationally represented Gallup polls support this point. For instance, when asked, is religious an important part of your daily life? Over 99% of Egyptians say yes. Compare this with 2/3 of Americans and 16% of Swedes. As an American, I tend to believe that I have chosen my religious and spiritual beliefs and activities. The reality is I'd probably believe and act quite differently if I had been raised in Egypt or Sweden. And I think that brings up a really interesting point, because that was something in my mind of, would I have had the same religious beliefs if my parents had practiced a different faith? And I think that's a fair question to ask. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think it's fairly intuitive that, kids are more likely to be of the faith or under whatever the base is, the purview of religion, faith, that their parents are. Some go against it, clearly. But I think the norm is, look, your parents lead you or mislead you, whatever it is. So typically, right, during development, child development up to 18-ish, it's highly influential, learned behavior.
Yeah, I5, what you think, man?
Yeah, this definitely, it's weird that they did this out of order, but I need to be in control. So they went back to nurture, which was weird because usually, people go from nature to nurture and then they almost never bring up free will. But anyways, this one is so bred with nepotism, it kind of juggles nature and nurture, because again, a lot of people feel like not only is it the social inclusion, the need to be birds of a feather, but it almost goes back to your birthright. Like, again, what your parents are, you feel compelled to, even if your community doesn't really reflect that as much. But it goes back to like blood and roots and stuff like that, which again is borderline, nature. But anyways, definitely nurture. It's the human need to want to belong, whether it's to your family group, your peer group, or even just your village. Even if just your village, has a certain religion, you don't want to be like that one guy that everyone hates. So everyone always feels the need to just blend in and play along. So definitely nurture. And
not to get too purposely meta here, but I kind of look at it in the bigger picture. Everyone is looking for love, and one can deem to find that love within community, whether or not it's true. And I would think it probably is more so true for some communities than others, right? So I think that's the bigger picture, rather than just looking for inclusiveness, because one can find that wherever they want. But why join a religion or continue to if they did when they were young, something that they don't feel like they're getting something out of. And this is where, to me, religion really separates from faith, or can, even baked into the question, right? Because what part of that did God have really anything to do with?
Yeah. I think one of the most foundational humanistic elements that we have is this idea of us and them. And I think if you want to quickly within your own community that you were born into, per se, if you don't go along with whatever that religion is or whatever that custom is or practice is, that's a quick way to get put into the them category as opposed to us. So I think that really ties back into kind of that desire to belong to part of a group. And that's not a bad thing. It just is human nature for protection and survival, is you want to be a part of something. Like you want to be a part of, typically.
You say it's not a bad thing, right? It's not intrinsically bad, right?
Yeah,
Community, right? It's but it is intrinsically sort of neutral.
Mhm.
If you take out emotions, right, wanting to feel connected again, whether or not somebody is, right, because that's a different story. There's a lot of people in bad relationships, like bad communities, but they may feel the emotion that, given how they were brought up, they would then define as love, even if it's not, even if it's hate.
Yeah, it's a good point. Hi-Fi, anything before? And I wanted to touch on one more point before I go to the next little bit, but anything else on that?
I'm good. Ready for the next.
And I guess, yeah, I found it interesting that they highlighted that, culturally, they pointed out 99% of Egyptians say yes, 2/3 of Americans, and 16% of Swedish folks. So I'm curious, the cultural divide there. Do you guys make anything particular of that? I'm not particularly up on Egyptian or Swedish culture, but there's a huge jump from almost everybody to like a very small portion.
Yeah, then we'd have to get into the whys, though. Is it law over there?
I can guess.
I don't know.
I can make a guess. It's probably the religion in question. Like, for example, certain religions have very close political ties. Other regions have very much religious political freedom. And so it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, because Sweden is one of the more like kind of liberal-esque countries in the world, right? In terms of like you can kind of be whatever you want to be without repercussions, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that makes sense. Is people would feel less forced into saying yes, potentially.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So more specifically, I imagine it is the religious beliefs of those we most admire that have the greatest impact on us, which makes sense. If your mom and dad are the most important people in your life and you admire them the most, you'll probably be likely to take on the same religious practices they did. If we have come to believe that religious people are, quote, cool for some reason, we'll probably start believing and acting more like them. If instead we have to come to believe that atheists are cool, we'll probably move in that direction. Genetics, control, and groups. Like every other behavior psychologists have studied, religious behavior is influenced by interaction between nature and nurture. Still, there's a lot we don't understand. One tentative answer generates 5 additional questions. Mystery remains, and I suspect will always will. Some people like to ask me how scrutinizing the psychology of religion like this influences my personal approach to religion and spirituality. Has it threatened the strong religious and spiritual inclination I had as a child? Surely none of the science I have reported here conflicts with my beliefs. A point that reinforces my general view that science and faith do not conflict if we probe the evidence deeply. My Christian faith also teaches that individuals have different inborn tendencies, need an anchor during turbulent times, and are influenced by their community. In fact, if anything, science has given me another path to pursue matters of faith. If science and religion are 2 windows to understanding the universe, my life would be darkened without the light of them both. So I take it as this person driving towards it's a nature and nurture, it's kind of both, and you should explore both routes. That's kind of my, I guess, summary of what they were getting at. I don't know. What do you guys think now that we kind of got to the finish line on it?
You want to go first, Sci-Fi?
Yeah, like I've been saying all along, it's kind of like a grade school level attempt to understand this topic. And so Of course, nature and nurture are huge variables early on in life, but later in life, they pretty much diminish into nothing, which is why we should only be talking about free will at that point. But I'll let you guys push back on that.
I agree with most of what Ifi said before the end. And with that, I don't know if my question is much more answered than in the beginning. I don't mean by you, Primal, but just in terms of I'm not exactly sure what the purpose is. Let's say that everything in the article was true. Let's just assume it's all true, not one inaccuracy. What does that lead to? Like, what problem can one solve from it? Is it just information, food for thought? Like, explore your genetic impulses? I mean, that's not really an actionable take, right? Maybe, but see, it doesn't say this, but maybe one could draw from it, go to my instinct, or maybe one draws from it, whatever my parents did, I should just stick with that. So I don't really think the article was particularly enlightening, thought-provoking perhaps.
And that's why we can have a discussion about it. So I like how it didn't answer any questions or give any intelligent thought. That way we can just fill in all the blanks for the article. So going back to, like Base's take on the article, I agree that, if he was actually looking for some deep insights or whatever, he definitely didn't get any from that article. So I would start the discussion with, like, maybe I was just some rando off the street and read this article, and that it had never occurred to me that the reason why I subscribe to religion X is because my parents were religion X and my community was religion X, and I never even questioned it. I just grew up my whole life just saying, that's funny. And I never even thought about, whether or not I even believe in this religion or not. I just always accepted it. And so maybe that was just the little spark that reader needed to, form independent thought. So I guess that's one thing the article is good for. Mm. But like I said, we can have a whole fun discussion about this if y'all want.
Yeah, I don't think that was a bad take. Now, where I think we were going to get into conflict, because I know what you want, Ifi, is
I want to rumble.
You believe that you can demonstrate that your religion is the right religion. And to that,
how much time do you got?
Not enough for that shit.
Okay.
My retort to that would be, no, it's actually mine.
Okay. State the premise of your religion. What are some of the axioms?
Well, hold on. We're not jumping from 0 to 60. I don't know if Primal wants to take his panel.
Yeah, Primal, do you want to talk about your religion versus my religion, or where do you want to go?
Yeah, no, I figured we're about an hour in, and then oftentimes when I do this kind of thing, this will be the point when I start opening it up to the guest. So if people want to come up, I see a few people hit the link already. My thought is...
Hot seat?
go ahead. I was going to say, if you guys are cool with it, I'll start bringing people up one at a time, and then please stay on. I'll give you your couple minutes to kind of give your thoughts on the topic, and then I'll let the next person come up if everybody's cool with that.
And then when we do tribunals on my channel, we're just going to fight with each other for like 2 hours straight, so without any articles.
I like it. All right, so I'll bring up since this can be a contentious topic, I'm going to put up a little shield to kind of screen people, let you come up, say a few things. It's not meant to be insulting to anybody. It's just, you know how this YouTube space gets. It's sometimes people show body parts, they get streams taken down. So I
haven't had that happen in about 3 months somehow.
Yeah, I've been bombed before, so put up an overlay if you don't know the person. And even if you think you know the person, sometimes they fake names, so be careful with that.
Crispy, how are you?
Hi.
That's Crispy. She's good.
Like, yeah. I'm naked, so
nice.
Don't be naked on stream. I mean, we'll bring it back real quick.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna grab another drink real quick here, but I want to hear your thoughts and keep on going. I got it loud enough so I can hear. So kind of your thoughts on the topic.
Well, first off, I didn't realize this was like a super formal debate. I popped in over here from Neve.
Oh, okay. I
With the
wore my
rain.
formal attire. My
He even
uniform.
wore a shirt this
Yes.
time. He's so formal.
That's why I decided to be naked.
I know. I was afraid Primal would be in the rubber ducky half naked suit, and I didn't want to compete. So
Right. I didn't know if he even did anything this formal. I certainly didn't get the engraved invitation.
I mean, I didn't think this was particularly formal. It's just
I
not
just
totally
got here.
chaotic, right?
So I don't know. I just was listening to like the rules for the last few minutes. I just got here, so I was like, "Oh shoot!" Like
and Primal, I do vouch for
Yeah, yeah.
Richard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Richard's cool. And old Joe's cool.
You
yeah,
hit the
old
link in
Joe's
the back,
good
and
and
I will.
Richard.
I'm more than
so-
happy to bring people up as long as you're not showing off breaking TOS things. Then more than happy to let you discuss. But Crispy, kind of the premise was just breaking down your take on why are some people more religious than others, and I'm not sure how much you heard, but kind of
Well-
your elevator pitch on maybe why some people are more religious.
Well, I heard enough, I suppose, to at least make a comment. Happen to be a practicing Catholic. I went to 12 years all girls Catholic school. Hard time. I did. I put my children through Catholic schooling. So I not only my take on the church basically is that there's not. I don't agree with everything that they teach, obviously, but I agree with a good amount of it, but not everything. So I don't agree with everything anyone does. So I and I also appreciate I like the formal services on Sunday and holidays. I enjoy all the formalities. Versus, I'm not a big fan of the instant gratification. These amphitheaters, these giant spectacles that are going on, like where it's like a rock concert and church. I mean, I've been to a couple of these events. I like one of my side hustles is I'm a makeup artist, and so I do weddings and stuff. I do makeup, and so I've gone to a bunch of these weddings that are held at these kinds of churches where there's like a Harley Davidson sign in the back with a bar in the back of the church. It's just nothing that I've ever seen or grown up with. But I appreciate my church. I'm active in my church. I like the community. I think that we do a lot in the community to make things better. And like I said, I don't agree with everything. That's all.
Quick question for you, Crispy.
Sure.
Are your parents Catholic?
Yes, they were, both sides.
Is that the reason why you became a Catholic?
Yeah, well, I really didn't have a choice because I went in.
They forced you at gunpoint?
Well, I mean, they put me in Catholic school, so we get baptized at birth, and then you are first grade or second grade. You make your first communion, where you receive the Eucharist. That's our sacrament, and then seventh grade you get confirmed, where you basically you're a soldier for Jesus, and you get confirmed on the seventh grade, which you're supposed to be able to kind of make a decision in the seventh grade I suppose that's what you're supposed to do, but
That's a pretty serious decision for a seventh grader. But
I was gonna say I don't think any seventh grader has gone against that. I don't even know if that's even part of it, but I would assume that it's the most grown up decision that we get at that point.
And I real quick, you can hear your lips licking. It seemed like your mic went up like 10 levels.
Oh, sorry.
Am I licking here, Lim?
No. You good,
You're
Crispy.
good. You're
Okay.
good.
Sorry.
think it's about
I'm
me.
gonna go ahead and bring up the next person. Is that cool? You ready?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Do you need me to go down now?
No. You stay.
Oh,
So what I'm
okay.
gonna do is I'm just gonna bring up like each person that wants to come on, give them a few, a minute or two to kind of give their take, and then I'll keep just adding people till we either run out of spots or nobody else is in the back, and then we can kind of keep dialoguing. So, man,
Okay.
Denton, I'll bring you up. Same kind of thing. We're gonna add the puppies on as the shield here. The dogs will keep us safe.
Aw, I like
And then,
puppies.
man, Denton, how's it going?
Doing good. What about you?
Not too bad, man. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, so like I kind of agree that I don't know what the writer of the article was trying to get at. I don't really know what his point was. But that being said, I think that there were some points that you could take from it, like particularly the point where it talks about how the study of how people with a lower self-control believe in God and a higher
Excuse me,
self-control.
really quickly. Can you turn the music down just a tad bit?
Yeah, sure. It's a
Thank
little loud
you.
on your end. Yeah.
I just can't hear him as well. I'm sorry. Sorry
No,
to
you're fine.
interrupt like
Better there.
that.
Better there.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. Go ahead,
No
Denton.
problem. It just seems like so backwards because, and I think it just shows that people don't really weigh the consequences of their worldview. Because if you have a low self-control, then you should actually love naturalism and predeterminism and all that. Because most religions grant you, a spirit or a soul, which grant you self-control or free will. And so in the actual paradigms, it's like the exact opposite. People should be believing the opposite things. And I think the reason for this is that atheists don't really acknowledge that their paradigm requires them to have no ability to change the outcome of their life and future. It requires them to have just predeterminate chemicals in their brain that determine the outcome of their life, and their will is all an illusion and whatnot. And I think that, but also, like, to play devil's advocate, I think a lot of Christians don't really acknowledge that granting them free will, like, God doesn't control their life. That actually gives them existential obligations and moral responsibility, and they can't just live their life by. They actually have moral responsibility on this planet. So it's like both people, both religious people who believe in God and atheists, they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to either like have no self-control and have God control everything and make everything fine and dandy for them, or they want to be able to change their future. And like both are wrong. Like you can't have both.
Yeah, but I think this is a little bit of a false dichotomy in terms of it's leaving out, for instance, luck. I believe that many atheists believe in luck. And luck is not coming from, in terms of atheism, God. But nonetheless, they believe in force of whatever the fuck it is, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Good stuff. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, Denton. If you're cool, I'll go ahead and bring up. I think it's Tariff, Guru in the back here. I'll do the same thing again though with the doggish.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Tariff, how are you doing?
Good, I'm good.
I love
Yeah.
those dogs.
Good to hear it. Yeah, everybody loves. That's Lucy
So
on
cute.
my black shepherd is Lucy. If you don't know, I'm a big dog guy. We got like 5 dogs here now, but
Wow.
my original two is Lucy is the black shepherd on the left, depending
Yeah.
on your screen orientation, and then on the right is my white shepherd Luna. So they're my pups. Those are my good girls.
So cute. How old are they?
Lucy is about to be 5, and Luna's about to be 3. So they're kind of young / middle aged.
Yeah, and my daughter works at an animal shelter, so we get we foster animals while they go through, like when they get spayed and neutered, they just come and stay for a few days
What the
so
hell?
they can get
I'm
out
sorry.
of the so they can be out of the shelter for a little bit,
Yep. Yeah. I like what Demolish is saying. He's right. I know that look. They're expecting a treat. They always are expecting treats. That's
Yes.
how they be. Yep.
That is a treat look. I've got that same look on my face right now. I just
You know,
found out
and
that they make Nutella cookies. I had no idea.
Guns brings up a great point. I'll have to get have to get the whole horde, as we like to call them, the entire horde of a shield up. I'll work on that.
Perfect.
All right, but yeah, Tariff, what do you think? Kind of just on the broad topic, give you a minute to kind of say your thoughts on, why are some people more religious than others?
Oh, that could be due to how their family raised them, or how, like, out of personal interest. I don't think it has to do with genetics, but like how their family like was raised, or how they were raised, and how they took personal interest in a religion. Like I for one studied like various different religions, like Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, um Shintoism, Aztecan. Like I studied like Native American religions, like Incan, Norse, Greek, various different religions, Egyptian, various different religions. And one
Mm-hmm.
thing I noticed about like religions like Hinduism and the major religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, or the Abrahamic and the Eastern religions, is one is oriented towards attaining union with God, like attaining supreme union with the supreme entity or deity or higher power, and the other, like the Abrahamics, are more oriented towards attaining heaven, doing good to attain heaven. But the Eastern religions are definitely more oriented towards like spiritual union with the higher power or whatever. So like they also are oriented towards doing good for people, but good in general, I mean, but not in the sense that there has to be a reward for it. It's selfless, like good actions and deeds, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, that
In the
makes sense.
Eastern tradition, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
For
cool.
sure.
I appreciate that. I'm going to bring up Demolish. He's been sitting back there. I appreciate you
Mhm.
waiting. I'll bring up Demolish and let him kind of take his shot at why are some people more religious than others. So
Do you think
Demolish, good
that?
for you.
Wait a minute. Do you guys think that the idea that people are just not going to church, people have stopped going to church? Do you think that that is a thing? Do you know if people have stopped going to church?
Oh yeah, I in my cursory research,
Yes.
attendance over the past like 10 years or so, give or take, from everything I saw, numbers are down. And
Right.
it's kind of like a 2-to-1 ratio for women compared to men. Like women are twice as likely to go, like 2 times as many women. And again, each individual practice may vary, but that's kind of the
Right.
consensus numbers I saw. I'm curious to do a separate whole thing on like why women go to church more than men. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my cursory research
Sure.
into it. Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
But
curious to
I would
see
be
if
interested in hearing
Richard.
all of that. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see if Richard says something along the lines of what I did or
yep.
not. I'm curious either way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been
There-
trying real hard to ignore people, which is difficult for me. I want to address everything everyone said, and of course, that's not wisdom because that wouldn't be answering the original question. Now, would it?
Well,
Um,
how about this? Start with the whole. Why are some people more religious than others, and then we'll get into we can kind of go off from there.
of course, human beings are never simple. We can just grant that right off the bat. There's always multiple things that influence. But if I had to say my opinion as what's the largest influence, um, personal self assuredness or lack thereof.
Mm.
That's what
Mm.
I would say. People who need society, who need relationship, who need confirmation, who need that kind of reinforcement on a regular basis, I think are more likely to be in some religious sect.
Yeah.
And does that answer the second part of the question as well? Why women are more likely?
To me, it does.
I agree.
It'd just be in their nature to be more social.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll do a second show on that specific topic at some point. But yeah, that's kind of my gut check reaction is women are more like community
Social.
relationship oriented, whereas men are more stuff oriented or task oriented. So I think they're more compelled to be part of that community, whether it's a community in a city or a community in a church or a religion, whatever it may be. But I'll keep that for another time. But yeah, good. I appreciate your thoughts,
And,
Demolish.
and
Nice to meet you. I
Caveat
haven't met you before.
Oh, pleasure to meet you as well. I look forward to creating a map of you and working on its accuracy.
Hey man,
Um,
there's not much to map. I'm a simple creature.
yeah,
That
right.
that
Because
sounds
lots of people are
creepy as
simple, sure.
hell.
But I'd like to put a caveat to everything that I said. I myself consider myself a theist.
And yeah, that's cool. I mean, I've gotten to the point, and I think iFi and I maybe are in differing opinions. Not even different opinions on this, but I kind of like I kind of don't care what people in their individual lives practice or don't practice. I'm kind of like, hey, if I have good interactions with you, then I don't care if you're the same religion as me. Like you can, in my eyes, and this is like a whole nother can of worms, but I think in my eyes, people can be good people regardless of if you're atheist, if you're Muslim, if you're Christian. Like to me, good people are good people.
Yeah,
That may be
course.
unpopular opinion.
well,
I
That's
I
what I personally believe.
yeah.
I think though that, and I think that there's like not everyone has the ability to do this, but I mean this is what Socrates did. People have to have the ability to question their own epistemology, and that will make you a better person. Because if you can't answer those own questions, then you might not even be a good person. You might just be listening to other good people.
I would respond to Primal by saying good according to who, first of all. And
My own infinite wisdom. I have goodness upon you all. No. Yeah. And Mandend had said my name and Socrates like within 30 seconds of each other. So
That
clearly
says it all.
we're going to a good place.
I
Now,
also noticed
about
that. Go ahead.
What about the distinction we were getting at earlier between religion and faith in terms of, right, you were just talking about people widely and women. I don't necessarily see a distinction between men and women when it comes to faith. But then again, that would be an interpersonal relationship. So all you can know as an outside observer is based off of what someone says and or their actions, right? So curious Richard's take on that between if we just move from religion to faith, how people would interact with it differently.
Restate the question as a variant of the first question so that I can understand better.
So do you see a distinction, for one, between men and women when it comes to faith?
I think women intrinsically, because of the need for their social skills, and especially in nurturing, are going to be naturally more emotionally based, where men are going to be on average more logically based.
No, I get that, but I don't know that faith requires emotion per se, or at least intrinsically intertwined with what faith represents.
Well, I would need to know your definition of faith to be that specific. I mean, I
Well,
can appreciate
yeah,
what you said. But
So, believing what one cannot prove.
believing what cannot be proven, or one cannot prove. Okay.
Right.
Well,
So
then,
yeah.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Would you see a distinction between men and women, for instance, or upbringing when it comes to faith, taking religion out of it, although faith and religion can overlap?
I don't know. I'm going to mill that about for a while.
I'll take it.
Well, hey, before you do,
Okay, I won't take it.
I see. Yeah, I'll let you take in a second, but we got, a couple more people I want to get up here, and then I'll let you have at it. But I see somebody's calling for you, based. So, old Joe, I'll bring you up. I'm assuming this is old Joe in the back, and then I'll bring up El Pero. So I'll just bring you both up, and then I'll kind of let old Joe have at it, and then El Pero, if we're cool for that.
Would you like me to drop down so you can get?
No, we're good.
Okay.
We got room for. I think I can bring up one more person. So if
Just let me know.
Yeah, you're good. So nobody else is waiting in the back. If you do want to come up and be part of the conversation, we still have a slot. And then Crispy was volunteering. If we get kind of full up, then we can start dropping people down. But we're not at that point yet. So, old Joe, I'll kind of let you go, get your shot in at base, and then we'll let El Pero go.
Here we go.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Yeah.
Coming in good.
Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll answer the first question as quickly as I can, and then I would like to post a direct question to two of your panelists because they make fabulous points. And when I threaten base, it's only because I'm a big fan of his. So I'm trying to
I figured
associate
it was
myself.
I figured it was tongue in cheek because I've
I'm
seen
trying
you
to
around.
associate myself with his fame somehow.
Yes, and can you
Why
turn
are
the
some
music down just a little bit lower? I'm sorry.
me?
No, just the music that he's
The
playing in
background
the
music.
background, just a little
Oh, okay.
bit. That's all right. Thank you.
Okay. Why are some people more religious than others? We seem to be difference engines. I believe some people have experienced more positive results from following religious beliefs than others, whether that be through exposure, through their parents. And those are the people that are more religious. So the two questions that I would ask of the two panelists, and I think that they're really, both of them are really on to an important point here, and then I'll drop down. First of all, I would like Based to take some time to very clearly differentiate between faith and religion, because that question has been asked and it's a very important question. Second of all, IFI made a comment earlier where he said and IFI, I'm paraphrasing, so correct me please if I'm wrong, but you talked about the dismissal, the de facto, the outright dismissal of religious thought has become more common in our society. And what has been the result for society at large at that mocking? And so just generally, do we see religion, if we think about a person that is overtly a person of faith, let's say a Christian, is that person respected in general society today the same way that they would have been 35 or 40 years ago? Are they looked at differently? And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I'm going to drop down now.
Good
Well,
luck.
hey,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for old Joe. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. I don't know if we've gotten on panel together, so it's a pleasure to meet you, and I appreciate it.
He's a national treasure.
Yes.
He's full of wisdom.
Go ahead, Based. I'll wait
Yeah.
till you're done before I respond.
Okay. So old Joe had asked me to distinguish faith and religion. I don't know that I'm the expert to do this. That would probably be better off for Richard, but nonetheless, I'll take a stab. There's commonality between faith and religion, right? There's a Venn diagram with, I don't know, something in the middle, spirituality. I don't think that one needs a religion to have faith. In fact, I know that's not the case. Whereas religion, I look at as pretty much a cult, a tribe of sorts, and that doesn't make it bad. But with that said, the faith within the religion is, so to speak, attached to whatever the rules of the religion are. And the truth is, I haven't found a religion, quote unquote, that has rules that are quite as accurate as mine. With that said, religion can offer good. It can offer maybe guidance towards faith. I haven't necessarily had that myself. I don't know that religion has brought me directly to faith, but nonetheless, I don't know where to go from there. They're different.
So I'll go ahead and answer that question as well. So faith is the evidence of things unseen, not believing in things that cannot be proven or believing in things without evidence. The last two is what butthurt atheists want you to think the word faith means so that they can win their argument. And I'll answer the last question in a minute. Religion is the tool in which we derive truth claims pertaining metaphysical things. So we have science for physical things and we have religion for non-physical things. And so unfortunately people use the term religion to mean like cult or feeling spiritual or, burning incense and candles and stuff like that. And none of those things are religion. Those are rituals and ceremonies. And so once you understand the relationship between faith and religion, then it helps you to approach the topic. But back to the general point of faith, even butthurt atheists use faith all the time in science. And so we use faith in everyday parts of our lives. So it's not just religious people that use it, but we use it more often in religion. And that's why they associate religion with being less stable than science. So going back to your question about do people just dismiss religious people outright? Yes, they do. And what happened after that? Now we've gotten to the point where no Christians or believers or religious people fought back, and so now it's just pretty much granted that religious people don't really care or try to argue their beliefs. They just say, "I believe it just because," and so what? Leave me alone. And then the atheists feel like they've already won because religious people won't even attempt to defend their beliefs. And
I want to pick apart so much of what you just said.
Go ahead.
But leave it for a second so I can get El Perro in, and then I think we've at least given everybody an opportunity, and then we can just have it out. So El Perro, nice to meet you. I've seen you on various things, but I don't think we've interacted yet. So it's nice to meet you. Glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to have me up. Thankful. My view on this is, as it relates to the spirituality and the religion, is they are distinctly different. And that first and foremost, everybody has a spirituality naturally. This is it's a far fetched premise, but a man and a woman have a child, and somewhere along raising that child in its early years it somehow gets abandoned and has to live a natural life on its own, somehow manage to survive. Does he have to have religion? I think the religion comes in when we start collectively working together as a society and develop a set of rules to get along, a social construct. And I think that's more what religion is, whereas your spirituality is your natural, like somebody mentioned earlier, your intuition, your instincts, things that people automatically have a base set up. And then we use the societal structures to kind of define them. And in that defining and going towards religion, we're actually going farther away from our natural spirituality.
No, well said. And then kind of back to the original overarching thing. What do you think? Why some people are more quote unquote religious compared to other people? What do you think the trait or the characteristic might be?
It's kind of hard to tell it at this point. I think a lot of what we're dealing with now is because of modernization, and that goes to that comfort and convenience of being able to live in these big societies. Whereas if we didn't, we would have a more natural sense of self without the commercial societies. So if we went back to nature more inherently, we would become naturally more spiritual.
Yep. And let me pause here for a second and acknowledge Don Juan. Thank you very much for the contribution for $4.99. Problems with atheist, or you know what, based. I think this is coming probably from your neck of the woods. So how about you read it out, man?
Yeah, problems with atheists is that they bring strawmans and it gets old. They show their ignorance rather than wit, yet they wouldn't exist without God. Thank you, Don Juan.
Well, here's what I think. I think that oftentimes that, especially online, people online will come across as sort of pushy, where they really are just trying to offer the word of God. They're trying to offer somebody some help, some hope, something, and they're offering God as a gesture. And I know that that's what they have found in their life, and that's been the answer for them, and so therefore they want it for other people. They want other people to experience it the same way that they have. The problem with that is that I think that comes across unless you're seeking that. I believe that your relationship with God should be a personal one. I think unless you are trying to find God, you oftentimes do just the opposite, and you will end up turning people away from God and from the church, because they just will chalk you up as being like a kooky, a kooky wacko. You're like a wackadoo that, like a Jesus freak, a Bible beater, all of those things. And they get completely turned off by it. So it doesn't do what you intend, like what your intentions were. Your intentions were certainly not to make somebody be repelled
It,
from it, you
yeah,
know.
I agree with that, but doesn't it also depend on what I mean, where they're coming from in their intentions? Like, for instance, if what we're calling faith, they may not view as faith. It may be more of, I want you to join my church and give money. It may be more of, you seem cool and I want to be friends. We can bond at church, rather than of the faith itself. And I think, to your point, Crispy, I think that showing that work, I'm actually, as Primal was talking about earlier as well, showing who you are is a better sales pitch, so to speak, than purporting, hey, if you become religious, by the way, you won't go to hell if you join my, sect, whatever it is.
Right, right,
And
right.
speaking of sales pitches, old Joe giving the hard sales pitch for Flow State being the greatest human to have ever existed. And
Wow.
speak of the devil. I don't know if
Oh
that's
yeah.
appropriate for this conversation, but here we are, Flow State. I wanted to welcome him up as well.
Ta-da!
There we
Old Joe,
go.
Hello,
that's a
Flo.
fantastic. I appreciate you, Old Joe. Blessings. You get
Yep.
right into heaven.
Straight shot. I don't
You
know,
get to
Flo, how much
decide,
you may have
Flo.
caught, but kind of when folks were coming up, we were kind of posing the overall question of why some people are more religious than other people. Maybe like your quick elevator pitch on your thoughts on that, and then kind of let you have the mic for a
Why
minute.
some are more religious than others?
Yeah, there was
Um,
speculation of, is it hereditary? Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it just what you grew up around? Like why some people would be more religious than other people.
Well, I
Why
mean,
I'm better than you, Flo. That's
it's
what.
gonna be a combination of both, of course, because obviously you need. I mean, okay, let me back up. I'm agnostic. I think to me it seems obvious that you would need to have early indoctrination. You'd have to have the nurture part, or else I don't think rational thinking adults would later in life go, you know what? I think that I'm going to just do whatever this book says and treat and assume this is where God's at. But I also think that it takes to some temperaments better than others, right? So you've got to have the soil and the seed. So I think it's definitely a blend of both. I feel like that's not a very satisfying answer, but
No, I think, but I think that's the general consensus most of us have come to, whether it was the article we reviewed or most people just talking about it, is they kind of go hand in hand to a degree of, like they took the separated at birth twins example and they tried to say like that they would come to the same religious on their own, and we were kind of dismissing that. We were just saying, what are the odds? It's like, all right, you had a subset of a subset and they happen to follow the same religious practice. Well, I mean, if it happened, I don't know if it was Christianity or insert whatever religion or practice, but I mean, the odds, if you do 1 out of 1 and say that was a study, then I don't know what to tell you there. So,
Well, the other night and during our stream, there was a lady that came in, and I respectfully had told her this was like her second or third round of the Jesus quotes and all of the Jesus stuff, right?
you're talking about Daisy May.
No, it was not. But anyway, I usually don't say much to them, but I tried to, in a very gentle way, tell her that what I just told you guys, just that I think it tends to turn people off more than, invite them in, unless they are looking for it. I would not. And so then she and I even used the word respectfully, I think. And she told me, she immediately got angry, said I was a closeted Christian, which I said I was not, that everybody knows that I'm a practicing Catholic. I'm not somebody that goes around and talks about it all the time, but I'm certainly not hiding it. And then she just kind of like laid into me or whatever. And I just told her that I was sorry, but it was a difference of opinion. And she said to me, and I'm wondering if you guys know the answer to this. She said that she said it's a commandment for me to have to share the word of God. And I said, I know the 10 commandments, and that's not one of my 10 commandments.
That wasn't Daisy?
No, it wasn't.
Who was
Unless
it?
she
I've
was a
heard Daisy
troll name.
quote that though.
Who was
But
it?
a Virginia lady. I had never seen her in there before. It wasn't in your stream, but it was in ours.
Is it while Daisy May was blocked?
No, we haven't got Daisy May blocked, and I get along fine with Daisy, so I don't have any problems with Daisy.
Who's
Although
blocking
she doesn't come
Daisy?
in,
Bunch
she
of
doesn't come in
wussies.
our place. I mean, I haven't seen her since like Easy's.
By the way, Crispy, have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord, personal Lord and Savior?
Yes,
Were you
yeah.
listening to anything?
I didn't know I had to accept it.
I have a verse for you. Jesus wept.
Hey, can you get the mic out of your throat, hi-fi? You can,
No,
Oh,
You know,
I need you to check my tonsils while you're in there. They look a
I've
little
got kissing
inflamed.
tonsils. My
There you
tonsils
go.
are really big.
So, why were you angry at scriptures being hurled at you? Were they personal attacks or something? Or?
No, it was just it was like several rounds of them off topic,
was it
and what
passive aggressive in a sense? Your
passive aggressive,
perception?
and there were other people speaking about their not at that particular moment, but other people speaking about their religion. I don't think it's necessarily polite to just keep on and keep on and keep on with about someone's religion, about a particular religion, when obviously we're in mixed company. And it just, and I said it respectfully. I just was trying to explain that I didn't think that was a great tactic, and that, we're in mixed company, and that there's other people that are very dedicated to their particular religion.
I think what
wasn't
I'm going
trying
to
to
start
hurt their
doing
feelings.
is when people start pressing the religion on me, I'm gonna go the other way, and I'm gonna
That's
try to
exactly what
convince
I
them
said.
to come to mine.
Oh yeah, I did join your cult as well, but I mean, I said that I did say
Richard.
I I did say that there's just a lot of different types of religion that are in our chat in particular. And so I just didn't, and I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to anybody. That was kind of my point. And like I said, I was tiptoeing around it. And then she sort of attacked me. And then somebody else, Mel blocked her, I think, which is unusual. Mel doesn't block hardly anybody. But she had said something that like went way over the line.
So, based, are you more interested in people who don't want to convince you their religion is real, or they're just kind of like, yeah, it's kind of real. I don't know, whatever. You want to join it?
I'm not interested in most people. Period. So what do you mean?
It sounds like you're saying you're not enjoying when people approach you with their religion. They're like, I have a religion, you should join. You're like, go away, stop bugging me.
No, let me rephrase. It just gives me a hint that this is how they communicate. So the best thing I can do is, give it back to them.
In kind, right? Meet them where they're at.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that, because I really do think that it makes people run the other way. It does not invite them.
Wi-Fi, have you considered being honest and converting to agnosticism?
All the time. At least twice a day.
So we can see you this Sunday nowhere then.
I actually went through my whole atheist agnostic phase through like my high school, college years. So been there, done that.
So
matured up.
That was convenient.
So
out of
so
it was
confused. I'm sorry, I keep stepping on.
Was it the virgin birth that was really like, I just can't get around how this could be not true?
It was the cosmic evolution that required too much faith, and I don't have that much faith.
I agree with that.
The what?
I agree. Cosmic evolution, like evolution, basically. I agree. That doesn't make any sense at all either, but I don't think it's an A or B scenario. I think it's probably a C, and we don't know what C is.
Well, once you go down the intelligent design rabbit hole, where else would it lead you to?
Do you think that ants can understand calculus?
Probably not.
I don't think that we can probably understand something.
You're making more specific claims than just like whether or not there's a thinking entity that created the universe or not. You're making the claim that there was someone who like walked on water and got resurrected. That's the claim that most people are denying.
Well, I started with the claim that it was intelligently designed, and so where does that road lead you?
Why does it lead you to the Bible?
It may not. Maybe you need to stop by the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the Tao Te Ching.
Why does it have to be any of these? These are, I mean, like in the span of human history, 2,000 years ago really isn't that long. And
Is your religious book the God Delusion? Is that the Bible
I don't have any religious book.
This is the issue.
Humans have any idea?
Is IFI's assuming, and I think this is, I don't know if it is for you, but it seems like it's a hubristic assumption that religious people have, that one of the answers that we have available to us must be the right answer. There's no way we don't know.
Is it okay if we think it's probably the right answer?
The right answer now. We've falsified the answers we have now with all the data we have. So,
and do we still come up with probably the right answer in all things we study?
No.
So since we've been studying gravity, we're not probably sure what it is at this point. We just have no idea, and we should just keep guessing.
We pretty much have absolutely no idea what it is. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
We have physicists. I mean, engineers and physicists use completely different concepts.
What about mathematics? Are we still guessing whether or not 1 + 1 = 2? Do we still feel like it?
Yeah, this is not at all the same thing, though.
It's absolutely the same thing. It's just one step after the other, Flo. This is how logic works.
1 on 1 = 2.
Yeah, so first you have a axiom to your logic, and once you have a structure to your logic.
I understand what you're saying. You don't understand what we're saying.
Okay, what are you saying? Translate for me,
we can only explain it to you. We can't understand it for you.
Okay.
I think IFI would like to take us down what he views to be logical entails into other ones further evolving into, well, this is the right answer because we took the pathway. The problem is a lot of your entailments include assumptions.
Of course, even science includes assumptions. That's why we have faith for things we can't see with our own eyes.
Yeah, but not everyone is claiming the objective truth.
Mathematics is.
Yes, we are. We are objectively claiming 1 + 1 = 2.
Don't say we. I'm not part of your we.
No, they're not.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were
part of the we group. Because if you don't understand faith, I mean, I know that you like get the idea of what it is. But if you don't believe in having faith or understand the whole concept, the meaning of it completely, where you believe in it, you are never going to get the Bible. And I also think that the Bible, I wish that people would, I have a hard time with the Bible only because in Catholics, let me tell you, we don't know the Bible the way that other religions do. We just don't. The priest tells us a little Bible story every Sunday, and then he relates it to real life with the homily. And that's it. We're not required.
Crispy, I'll say the hardest part with the Bible is the assumption that it's all factual and true.
That's exactly right.
That somebody hasn't manipulated it at some point along the way for their own gain.
And I think it's like the game of telephone where people tell the story and then they weren't purposely trying to make it something that it's not. I just think that when it's been retold, that things are different than you can't help but tell it. If I told Flo a story and then he retold it to Base,
wait a minute, Crispy.
It's going to be different. I know you're going to fight with me about it, but I don't.
Have you ever heard? You ever heard of the Latin Vulgate, the Greek lexicon?
Yes, and also that also presents a problem because it's also been interpreted from a different language. So
can I respond, Crispy?
Yes, he didn't even make his point yet. Richard didn't even get it out.
I'm sorry.
Okay, she's a little too excited. It's all right.
That's all.
Yeah, no, but let Crispy, are you kind of finished with the thought, and then we can let him respond, and then we'll go to Dendon?
Yeah, I'm completely finished with. That was all I had to say.
No, but I think it's a fair question to ask. Has over thousands of years, has there potentially been tampering with and or manipulation of the book in such a way that it may have benefited somebody and may have not maintained its pure form? I think, as a slightly skeptical person, I think there's validity to that concern. That's my
It's
position.
absolutely been proven. There are slave Bibles that are manipulated, right? We can demonstrate it. It's demonstrably true.
Yeah. And that I'm a person. If you had to put me in a box, I'd say I'm a Christian. But I have parts of me where I'm like, I look at the Bible and I say, hey, is there a chance that somebody altered this to benefit them? And I have that skepticism in my mind. So that's
Noah's Ark.
and that could be, and you call me blasphemous or whatever you may, but that's just my innate.
I don't even think
logic.
that's the big question. I want to go on, but Richard did not say what he was saying.
Looking out for your
I've got-
dad. Good son. Good
I've got
son.
pushback now for 3 different people. I've been taking notes. It's so bad. iFi, you answered the first of the first of the 2 questions, and you said things unseen. I think everyone could probably appreciate an eventual answer from you as an examples of things that aren't seen. Based Oracle, if it is true that an agnostic or etc. can be a humanist or quote unquote good, how does religious or faith beliefs make anyone better except for that people will justify whatever they believe based on some higher authority?
Do you want me to go first or based?
I'm not in charge.
You just asked me a question and then based. So which one do you want to
Whoever
hear
was
first?
Spit it
first.
out, iFi.
iFi, if you were first, then go.
Things unseen can range from splitting of atoms to some dude walking on water. So the fact that it requires faith means you're trusting in someone else's word. So when I don't walk into the next room and look with my own eyes at this man walking on water, that's not believing in things without evidence. That's believing in things without me personally going and looking at it with my own eyes. It's trusting someone else's account.
But you actually have evidence to the contrary. Your whole life is evidence that didn't happen.
I was answering his question, Flo. If you want to debate it, I'll debate it with you.
All right, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt based.
Yeah. I've never seen you turn down an argument before, but
I'm waiting for base to respond, and then I will fight you. Hold on.
Shut the fuck up,
I
iFi.
win.
I
Go
could.
ahead, based.
Yeah. Anyways, as to
Should I say
your
it again,
question,
Dave?
Rich, what up?
Okay. Should I say it again?
No, I think I have it. As to your question, I don't think I brought up agnosticism, but maybe something I said kind of lent towards that. But to get at the crux of the
Let me
higher
remind you
power.
what you said so you can address it instead of wasting your time addressing something I didn't even ask you. Not to be rude, it's just I don't want you to waste your time. Okay, so the question was something like, how does faith and or religion influence people's acts in real ways in real time? And your answer was apparently something like it can make people better. Okay. So, but that can be true. But then, a hardcore atheist like myself was a humanist, right? And I did quote unquote good things for my society, for my friend group, for my immediate family, etc. I did those kinds of things. So it wasn't my religiosity that did that. And unless a person has, poor moral standing, they wouldn't need to refer to religion to be a decent person. Thoughts?
Yeah, I could go a couple different directions with this. I think I understand. So I do think that, and we already went through just to say religion versus faith, and I do think that something outside of ourself, let's say biologically, needs to be sort of the platform, that we view what's right and wrong, right morals, those types of things. I think outside of religion in and of itself, but within faith, look, this is sort of opening a can, but I would call it love. And what I mean by that specifically, to differentiate between love as used very commonly, is the fact that I'm sure, well, I don't want to be too sure, but I think probably everyone here on panel who has kids would die for their kid if necessary, right? And that is something that is not pragmatic. It's outside of you, right? It would be more pragmatic to your life to not give it away, right? To not sacrifice. So I think that sacrifice for what we could call good, we deem as good, has to come from a place outside of our own selfish tendencies, outside of our ego fulfillment, right? And the only thing I could put a word on it would be love.
Love.
And by the way, I find love and God to be interchangeable.
And if anyone still has any patience for me, Crispy Treat, you mentioned the flood narrative. Are you aware that the Hebrew word for a large body of water is yam? And the word in that story is mayim, and mayim refers to small amounts of juice, including human juices, like reproductive juices, and is actually, according to Gesenius and Strong's, the word waters there is showing a relationship between people and has nothing to do with H2O.
Well, I just was that actually speaks to my argument on why things are misinterpreted and there's so many misunderstandings about what the Bible is actually saying. And no, I did not know that was
Semen.
Semen.
Essentially, it means semen,
around
in that context.
In semen juices. No, I
Yes,
didn't.
ma'am.
This is why I wanted to respond to you, because it's like there are so many different alternative interpretations, and if you actually look at you can go look at the original text, and they've been untampered. Like we found a lot of them, but you know they're questionable. They say completely different things. So how do you know, at what authority do you take like the proper interpretation? Like how do you know what authority do you listen to? I mean, there's different sects of Christianity itself, and there's different interpretations of the Bible. So I don't know.
I agree with that.
It's a tough road to go through. So, Richard, I know you had your list of questions before I kind of turned it over, because I know Flo and I was getting ready for them to have a back and forth. So, did you have any other kind of queued up questions you want to do?
I got more than my share of floor space. I'm willing to retire it.
You sure?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Bring it on.
We'll let El Perro go first, because I feel like
all right.
once we let Flo and I-Fi go, then we might kind of have a bit of a time there. So
go ahead, Wizard.
Yeah, because on the topic, I can't remember what verse it is. Romans 2:14. The Gentiles, which know not the law, but by their nature do what the law says, without having the law, are a law unto themselves. So again, this goes back to the spirituality without the religion. It's inherent, I think, and it's I think it's the aspect we need to look at more imperatively than the religions. Just my opinion.
Context is important.
Oh, extremely important. Yes.
So after the gospel was preached, now we do have the law complete without having to guess or wonder about it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, before Flo gets into it, actually, go ahead, Flo. What was your objection?
Before Flo does get into it, Don Juan claims to have had some super chats unread.
I saw the one. I had Base read it. If I missed another one, I apologize.
There was two others, Primal. If you click on starred, they'll pop up on in StreamYard.
My apology. I didn't see those, Don Juan. So again, thank you. Thank you for bringing those up. So let's see. We got that first one earlier. I saw that, so we read that off. Based, I'll kind of kick it to you, man. I'll let you read the. We'll go in timestamp order here, but this is kind of on your space, so I'll let you read it.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Don Juan. First, Crispy is reading Aquinas. Let's fucking go. I-Fi, she's ahead than you. LOL.
Objection.
Women go more to church because they feel more guilty.
Ooh.
LOL. By the way, free will exists.
Plot twist.
All right, and then the next super chat again from Don Juan. Thank you, I appreciate it. Based to you, man.
Catholicism.
Right with me. Catholicism.
Yes. I'm good. Stands in faith and reason. By the way.
Oh, the other one I wanted to tell you. I was trying to tell you in the chat the other day, but it's Francois. It's Francois. That's how you say that one.
It's French.
It's French. It's French.
Yep, my enunciation a little más o menos or whatever.
I'm just messing with you.
Nice. Bueno español.
How would you say that incorrectly in English? Francis?
I forget, but it was killing me in the chat.
I fucked it up.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
He's not
But
good
but to
with
that point,
foreign accents, but you can't be perfect at everything.
I know. I'm 1 degree removed. I know.
Right,
I'm working on that.
Okay, before Flo gets into it, on the faith thing, we also have biographies of people like George Washington and Julius Caesar and stuff like that.
Our debate.
And those, hold on, and those have been revised and translated and interpreted and all that stuff. So do we not believe that those things happened either, because it probably never really happened or isn't accurate at all to what
Is
the
this part
people
of the
said?
debate, or is this something else?
No, it was a side note of what everybody else was saying.
Is this
Go ahead, Flo.
Is this in bad faith? What are you? What are you asking me this? What? I don't know who you're asking.
It was to the entire panel. Everybody was talking about the phone game and like translations and revisions, and therefore we don't know what the original said.
I'm the
Hey,
one
but
that
hold
said
up, live
it's like the
live
phone
from
game.
Don Juan coming in with another.
Flo, you read Aquinas yet?
He was trying to super
Thank
chat
you.
me, but I'm not quite at the required threshold for receiving said super chats. So, Based, you got to read this off because I'm not equipped to do it.
Yeah, I think I just read it, but Flo, you read Aquinas yet?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes,
He says,
apparent-
No, you
I,
have not.
I don't know if I believe that answer though.
Give us a quote, Flo. Go ahead.
Thou shalt not pester agnostics.
You should have gone with my scripture. Jesus wept.
I thought about that one. I was like, damn, I should go with this one over here, but like there's so much Aquinas. Like,
Where did Aquinas comment on Jesus wept?
I'm sure he said it at some point. He likes to quote the
he wrote
Bible.
like 120 papers or some shit. I don't know. Or writings. I don't even know if they're books or papers or what. But I've read them all.
Beware of the person of one book, Aquinas.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
See, if you'd read Aquinas, you'd have known that, Flo.
Damn
Now
it,
you
and
know.
Don Juan was. I've been so annoyed with him, but he's been having my back this whole time.
Yeah, he
Well-
got your back. Slow state, being slow, not surprised. Shaking my head.
There
Thank
you go.
Don Juan.
He had to break it for you, Flo.
I don't
Maybe
think Flo
maybe
is
Don
slow
Juan
at
needs
all.
to work on his salesmanship.
And listen, the only reason that I am reading it is because I happen to be over at a friend's house, and that book was in her library, and so
That was a good
And
story.
you're bored over there?
What's that? What'd you say?
Is the electricity out? Are you bored over there? What's going on?
No, I mean, like, that was in her library, and so like I thought, oh my god, well now I have to, because here this person online keeps asking me if I've read this every time I run into them, and so here it is right in front of me. I wasn't gonna buy it, but it was right there, so I had to. And so far, it's not been like, it's been a real snooze, Don Juan, but I'm reading it. Just letting you know, it's not really like it's
There's not
been-
enough sex and violence in it, huh?
Yeah, no.
And
yeah.
thank you,
know
Don
I'm a
Juan.
true crime
No
girl,
such
right?
thing as coincidences, crispy.
Oh,
There you
is
go.
there such a thing? I
It was
don't
meant to
know.
be, he's saying.
Yeah, I do think that there is such a thing as just plain old coincidence, but this one seems like divine intervention.
Also, nothing is a such thing as luck, according to Based Oracle. So
that's true.
Is
Keep
that
that
what
in
he
mind.
says? I'm in his cult, and I didn't even know he said that.
Lucky you.
But I'm
I
kind
mean,
of
you better
curious.
get-
Since
you
Flo
better-
has
better
his
get moving on that book.
cardinal hat on. I'm
He's
really
got his
curious-
thinking hat on. He's ready to fight fire. Let's do it, brother.
He's got his cardinal hat on.
I got my holy water here.
Ready to go. He's got his holy water. He's got his cardinal hat on. He's ready to go against Flo.
I got my
I'll put
Pepsi, I got
you
my
on the
cigarette.
same row to make this
All
happen.
that build up, this better be good. I'm gonna go
my
smoke a
Catholic
cigarette if
schoolgirl
this sucks.
uniform.
And thank you, Austin Murphy. Much love. Appreciate it.
Primal? Oh, sorry.
Just don't splash any holy water on me. It burns.
All right, hey,
Primal, can I
what's up, Terry?
Oh.
Terry?
Can I respond to the topic at hand?
Yeah,
Go
Alright.
real quick, because then we're gonna let Flo and I-Fi get into it for a
We're
minute.
gonna make out.
Noise.
We're gonna have sex.
Oh,
with regards to the Bible changing in nature, like as it's retold, I would agree with that. Yes, it definitely like changes the narrative or what is said in the Bible, depending on ethnic or geographical or linguistic backgrounds of the people who change, like, and the times in which they lived in too. So those are all very important factors. They live like the Renaissance, and
Yeah.
like there was maybe many various interpretations of the Bible as the printing press made it more accessible to common people. Like
Mhm.
when Johann Gutenberg created the printing press, he made he made it so that the Bible could be more accessible to, or other texts could be more accessible. It used to be an oral tradition for religious things,
Yeah.
religious texts, but like religious scriptures. But now, like with the printing press during the Renaissance era, like it was made more accessible. And I think, um, with regards to like the tainting of the stories, in India, even like with the main text, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, there's a north and south recension. There's east and west recension for each
The
for each.
creation by yeah, yeah, I don't know, but are you just trying to say, like, for instance, when people don't know anything about religion, I always tell them to read the children's Bible. It's
Right,
so easy to get through, and it makes so much sense, and it has the most important stories in there, and
right,
it's just a good way when they know nothing about religion whatsoever. That's what I always recommend.
right.
But speaking
And
of printing
also,
presses, I want to address the money printing press that is Don Juan. So, based, have at it.
Thank you, Don Juan. The Catholic Bible has been unchanged since Nicaea. Is that right?
I don't
Look at
know
that.
about that because King James is the original, I think, and we don't use King James. The Catholic Bible, or the Catholics don't use King James.
Everyone
King
knows God
James is
spoke the
1610.
King's English.
Okay,
King
I
James
don't
is
know exactly what
sixteen ten.
No
that
I
is.
debate.
personally
So,
have a
yeah.
1537 Matthews.
Yeah, see, I
So
don't
I
know.
think I think to have this to help this go well, I think I'm gonna bring Flow and iFi to the front, and I'll bring you everybody back up in a moment. But I'm gonna let those two have the floor and have out if you guys are good for it. So
Let's
everybody
do it.
hang
Oh,
out. I'll bring you back up. If it's a good time for you to dip out, just say so. But I'll let those two have the floor for now and hang out, and I'll bring you back up in a little bit.
I have to dip. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, good to see you, Tarif. Good, appreciate you, man.
nice meeting you.
All right, funny hat. Let's do this.
You want to tap out now?
Yeah, you win.
Right on.
What was your objection to anything I've said thus far?
So your claim was that you had faith because you have faith in things that were written to be true, right? And my point was that
Yep.
your faith is flying in the face of your experience, which contradicts, say, your entire life's experience contradicts walking on water, virgin birth, things like this. So
Hence the requirement for faith, because again, I didn't see Jesus, but all the science tells me that's not possible. So how can this be?
So why do you think that this is worth having faith in?
It's not so much the miracle itself, though that is very important to some people. I'll go ahead and take that. So let's say I was a super skeptical person, and if someone made an extraordinary claim, I would say, what? You need extraordinary evidence to prove said claim. So if someone claimed to be either God or a messenger from God, what sort of evidence do you think they should bring with them?
Well, I don't know, but it would have to be more substantial than it would have to be substantial enough to overcome the fact that what they're claiming flies in the face of my experience, and also and not both that, like, for instance, walking water, both that I've never seen anybody walk on water, and also that I have seen almost every religion be agree, and even you'll agree, everybody agrees that everybody thinks they've got their own, they have the truth, and they'll agree that everybody else is at least confused, if not just straight up fraud, right?
Depends
So
on who you ask, but yeah, I know what you're getting at.
right, so basically we've got experience that says people don't walk on water, and we've got experience that says people do lie through religion.
Correct.
We've got perfect experience in both these things, religion being false and in miracles not happening.
Or just being fraudulent, for gain. Like they could have been scamming them for money or fame or whatever.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure. I was trying to be generous by saying.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the arguments that has been beaten to death. Many an atheist has taken the claim that not only
I'm not atheist, I'm agnostic.
Oh, well, you know what I mean. Anti-religious. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. So, anyways,
maybe I am.
So, they consider the fact that it's possible that Jesus was just a guru of his time, nothing special, but it wasn't making enough money, so he saw the real money in like getting his followers to elaborate for him that he was able to do magic and stuff like that, and that would really sell the message. And so not only was he a scam artist, he was one of the best scam artists of his time in order to get people to die for him, since that's what they ended up doing. But anyways, we take that into consideration as well, including mass hallucinations. All the apostles were tripping on mushrooms and stuff like that. So
my question is, how did you overcome that? The points I made.
The point you made was what?
Was that there's a lot of reason to not believe that the Bible is
true.
Oh, so how do you overcome that?
So that's how I overcame it. So I steel-manned all of those arguments. I never dismissed them outright. I never said, no, you're just angry, butthurt, whatever. I would say, okay, that's interesting. Let's look at it as if your claim is true, that Jesus was a scam artist. Jesus was crazy. Jesus
I'm not making those claims. I'm not making any of those.
I'm telling you all of the claims, including
why
yours.
Don't you focus on the ones that I brought up.
That possibly Jesus was scamming the people by
that you, in your experience, in my experience, in our experience, we have perfect track record of not having seen virgin births and walking on water happen, right? So that's the contents contradict our experience, and the fact that religion being a scam and a grift does work with our experience. And I'll add another one to it. We've all seen a ton of books, and none of them have been the Word of God except for one. So you got to overcome a lot of things that you actually do have experience in, and say you're going to disregard all of this experience and evidence in favor of something that flies in its face.
So all you're doing is reaffirming the fact that the trial of faith is probably one of the most difficult for humans to overcome, because again, as a common sense, rational, logical person, you're making the argument that no one should believe these things because, come on, people, we know science, we know what can happen, what can't happen. So why are you giving in to these obvious fantasy claims or magic talking?
I would think that there's some underlying thought process as to why you chose to override all that stuff in favor of this, right?
Again, once you steelman all the arguments, not just that one, but all of them that it could possibly be, including mass hallucinations or just plain old myth creations of, some writer of the time trying to create this, savior person just for political motivation or whatever. We've considered all those arguments and all those debates. It still doesn't explain the accounts. So once you actually consider the accounts, you have to look at the nature of the accounts. They aren't done in secret. They aren't done in conspiracy. They aren't done in, any of the formats required to propose those sort of ideas. Because once you present information in public, there is no more debate about who is able to see it and what they saw. Now, there is debate about whether or not... What's that?
Of course there is. People disagree about what they saw all the time.
No, and this is where you have to draw the line somewhere, Flo. You have to say, okay, I don't buy it when it's just Peter and Jesus, but when it's Peter and 12 people, now I'm a little more open to it. Now when it's Jesus and 1,000 people in his audience, now I'm a little more convinced. And then
it does not matter how many people the Bible says were there and witnessed it. We're still talking.
It doesn't?
No, not a bit. Not a bit. We're still talking.
Do you understand how witnessed accounts work, like in modern day judicial courts?
Yeah, but we're not there. This is a 2,000
So
year
so
old book.
hearsay is easy to
This is
dismiss
one,
because
no, this is one witness. It's a book. The book is the
it's
witness.
not
You
one
can
witness.
say that the book says there was 10,000 people there, but that doesn't mean you have
There-
10,000 witnesses. You still have one source.
There are plenty of religions that you can easily dismiss because it is hearsay of one author making claims by themselves with no one else witnessing anything. I agree.
That's what this is. This is a book that is saying that there's lots of people who saw it too, but you still only have one source. It's one witness.
And so is the biographies of George Washington and of Julius Caesar. It's a book that says there was lots of people around in his court and they were in his army and they were a citizen of his kingdom and they saw things happen and their mother was there.
So I'm still trying to figure out the thought process that leads you to override the obvious evidence against you in favor of it. There had to be some thought process there, right?
Yeah, again, so once you eliminate all of the possibilities that can debunk your claim, and believe me, they've tried and I've considered all of them, then you're left with the only conclusion that the claim is true. Once you've eliminated all of the possibilities that claim is
You're
false.
not explaining your thought process at all. You're just saying that you had one.
No, I'm saying that it started with what you had, and that's why I already gave you the spoilers. There were many other ways to try and debunk the claims of Christianity, including mass hallucination, myth writing.
Stop going there.
I'm giving you more ammunition for your argument. So it sounds like.
I don't want more. I don't want you to help me with my side of the argument.
Okay, it's just the miracles. It's just the miracles. That's the only thing you have a problem with. You don't have any problem with Jesus being a real person. You don't have anything wrong with it. Everything his teachings were accurate. You just have a problem with him walking on water.
I'm saying that this is not the word of God. And we know that because we're familiar with books and none of the other books are. We're familiar with religions and none of the other religions are.
Answer my question. So is it just the miracle parts? Everything else you're okay with. You're okay with the man being real, everything he said being true. Only the miracles didn't happen. Is that the only part you have a problem with? Yes or no?
The whole claim that this is the word of God and this is the Son of God, but also God. Like the whole thing. Like I'm okay with some of the people in the Bible being real historical figures. That's fine. I mean, that's certainly true.
That's a good start.
But the religion underlying there's religion and the history, right? And the two are separate. I'm not arguing the history. I'm arguing the religion component of it.
So do you think everything else in the Bible was made up other than the miracle parts? Like all the history, the taxes, the families, the little conversations they had, the fish they ate that day, all that stuff. That part's real. Everything, just the miracle parts.
I haven't. You know what? I'm not interested in sitting down and sifting through what parts of the Bible are real and false. I'm saying that there's a conceptual split between history and religious belief.
It's funny how you distinguish the Bible from history when it is a historical account of what happened and who was there.
You're not going to address the questions that I've started with, and I'm trying to get you back onto. Am I? Are you?
It sounds like you're trying to say, like, at what point did I just accept miracles, even though it completely defies all logic and science and modern day thinking?
Why did you decide that even though there's a ton of reasons why it would make sense that the Bible is not the Word of God, how did you decide that it actually is, and that all of these things I just listed should be overridden?
Again, my personal choice was from seeking the truth, no matter what form it came in, even if it came in something that I resist believing, like this just doesn't sound like something rubs me wrong here. And even though I want to dismiss it and say, no, that probably didn't happen. That was probably a hallucination, or, oh, it was probably a scam or conspiracy or something. But the fact that I keep coming back to it and saying, oh, I see, that is actually what happened, and that's just me fighting it instead of me just accepting, a historical fact for what it is. Now, I do all the same tricks all the atheists do. I do all the revisions and the translations and the word of mouth and phone games. How do we know anything in the Bible is right? And it's all of that is cope. It's the exact.
What's your response is cope.
No.
You will not answer my questions. You're answering everything but my questions.
So you keep saying, like, what is the thing? What is the one thing that convinced me the Bible was accurate?
Your thought process was, you have a belief. You have a conviction. How did you get there?
I keep telling you, it's a long process. So first you have to learn how logic works. Then you have to learn how, history and accounts work, and whether or not, hearsay is credible, and whether or not more witness accounts make it more credible, and so on and so forth. Right. And then you have to introduce the thought of, metaphysics and miracles and stuff. Then how do you correlate that with science and all that sort of stuff?
I'll accept that I've won that point, and I'll move on to the next one.
Okay, sure.
If God is as Christianity portrays him to be, which is, and that would include that the 10 Commandments are true, and that God does not want you to lie.
Correct.
Why are you lying about what you know?
I'm not lying about anything I know. Name one thing I've lied about.
Well, you're certainly not answering the question about how you came to your conclusions.
I tried many different ways in the English that I was taught growing up, but I don't know how else to explain it.
You assert that you know that God is real. I've heard you do it before.
After a long process of deliberating between paradoxes and things that can't be explained and things that require faith and all kinds of... I don't know what.
Do you know that God is real? That's and
I am about 95% sure that the most probable answer to the question, is there a higher power, results in the answer being the Christian God.
What? How? Not just an you're not 95% intelligent design. You're 95% to Christian God.
Yes, because the intelligent design leads you to that's what, earlier when I said, where do you think the intelligent design takes you, Flo? Because if you look at all of the religions, including just your own, make up your own religion, try to answer the question yourself. Without any other man's religion, if you just try to figure it out yourself, what is this intelligence that created our universe? Is it aliens? Are they computer programmers?
I haven't conceded that I think there is intelligent design, but I think that intelligent design makes more sense than evolution. Like, it makes more sense that something was constructed than that it just accidentally exploded its way into consciousness. And
then all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. If it's aliens did it and we're in just a simulation, then who are the aliens? Who created the aliens? Who's their higher power?
What's more likely is that we don't know because we don't have all the knowledge in the world. Our knowledge is limited. That's what people who are religious don't seem to like to acknowledge, is the limit to their knowledge.
We don't know, but some of us are more sure than others. It was exactly the way I stated it. I don't know for 100% fact that the Christian God exists. I am mostly 90% sure after my 40 plus years of deliberating this question.
How old are you? You're old.
Mid-40s.
God damn.
Yeah. So after being born in a atheist Christian house, half and half, denying Christianity during my teen years, going full butthurt atheist. I mean, I was all about, cosmic evolution and abiogenesis and all that stuff. And then realizing how completely retarded that was, I was like, okay, maybe I'm just agnostic. So, I started going back into the agnostic realm. But then you keep getting stuck in the gray lands of like everything's subjective. There is no, like, do I exist? What is reality and all that stuff? And you can't ever answer any of those questions. And you certainly can't answer the question between getting past ethics into morality, because if there is no God, there is no objective morality. So it's just all of our feelings competing.
We've had this discussion.
No,
before.
You've lost that every time. Every time you've lost that.
To revisit that because that's another.
But even morality aside, just is there a higher power and is there a purpose to life, and do I even exist to begin with? And so the one question for scientific fact is, even if flow doesn't exist, something that's manifesting himself as flow exists. So what is that thing? Is it, is God just playing puppets with himself or whatever? We don't know, but something exists.
I mean, we don't know. That's my point, though, is that just like an ant can't engineer a bridge, I don't know why we would think that we can understand God. Like I think that's just
We can't, and that's why a lot of humans' brains melt when they try to figure it out. Like, oh, I know what God is. God is this sky wizard. You know, he's like in a robe and he's got a long gray beard and he shoots lightning bolts at people that he gets mad at. You know, this is what happens when humans try to conjure God,
Right.
but that's not what God is.
That's correct. I agree, but claiming to know, I mean, all the religions claim to know more about God than they do.
Nope. There's a bunch of religions that don't know jack shit about anything. Have you
They all
studied?
claim to know more about him.
Have you studied a lot of pagan religions like Greek mythology and Hinduism and all that stuff?
You know, to various degrees, a bit.
At least you would have sounded smart if you would have said like Taoism. Taoism was like one of humans' best attempts to try to logically figure out God.
Is that I do kind of have a soft spot for Taoism, but Christianity is not exempt from your attitude towards the other religions.
Again, during my atheist agnostic phase, I treated all religions equally. I assumed they were all fake, they were all made up, they were all hallucinations or just retarded ramblings by some drunken idiot or something. And so I observed all of the evidence and history and claims and internal logic and external manifestations and all that sort of thing. And slowly but surely, I kept creeping back into Christianity because it was the only one that actually provided answers to any of my religious questions.
Let me land this here because we keep looping back on how you did a bunch of research and you've addressed all the questions, and so now you know. If God is the Christian God, right? Mm-hmm. Don't you think it would make more sense that having faith would be something like having the faith that we know as much as we're supposed to know, and that if we're supposed to know more, God will show it to us, instead of having faith in the book that you got from a man?
You mean sort of like already having the law of God written on your heart to the point where all humans are religious by starting...
What I mean is actually having faith in God that you will know what you need to know when you're supposed to know it, and not trying to get ahead of the game and force fit some belief system that doesn't actually make sense.
And so that the problem of the test of faith, which is probably the hardest test a human can ever take, I agree, it's not for everyone, and certain people, certain control freaks, for example, speaking of psychology of religion, simply won't accept that leap of faith, first of all, because it sounds like turning your brain off and just, being a sheep and like, oh, believe anything you tell me. Right. Exactly. So that's why it's called a test of faith, because if it was easy, everyone could do it. But anyways, some people can't live with the fact that at some point you have to trust God. That's like the absolute bottom line, whether you want to or not.
I agree, and I'm going to suggest that I, as an agnostic, trust God more than you do as a Christian.
Okay, that's fine. And so maybe you're waiting for like your miracle moment. You're like waiting for God to like spell out your name in the clouds, and you're like, oh, now I'll believe in you, God. That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for the magic in the clouds.
I'm not stressed about it.
No. I'm saying I don't know what your line is. I don't know what evidence you require in order for you to finally accept that as truth. But I'm just saying, I'm guessing that's what it would take, something along those lines. And so that's one of the most common answers. And again, I personally went through the same journey as well. I had my moments where I would sit there and pray to God and say, oh, come on, God, just give me a little secret miracle. I won't tell anybody. Just do it where I can see it, and then I'll believe in you. And then, you can save me the trouble of doing all this thinking and stuff. And so, unfortunately, his answer to me was, no, you have to use the brain I gave you. And so that here we are. So anyways, it's definitely a pain in the ass. I know. Arguing miracles is not fun. Have you seen that last debate I had with Vegas Vips about miracles? It got funny rather quickly. But anyways,
I think that we've come as far as this conversation. Should we?
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll agree to disagree. Also, you win nothing. Good day, sir. That's for old Joe. He loves that.
I wouldn't have expected you to concede any victory to me. So, good day to you as well.
Yeah.
Hey, that was fun though. I appreciate it. I
Whee!
appreciate you all keeping it between the lines and doing the things and all. I appreciate all that. So thank you guys. I thought it was a productive dialogue, even though you may not agree. I enjoyed hearing the various perspectives and arguments. Let the crowd decide what they kind of vibe with. I see various chats in there. I also want to make sure to thank Based Oracle for being here tonight. I know that he brought a number of folks into the chat and helped have this discussion happen. So I appreciate that. So shout out to him. If you don't already follow Based, go check out his content. I'm sure the mods can pin it in the chat for you. And then also Don Juan, thank you for all the super chats. I just wanted to make sure to acknowledge that. And I have it at the bottom there. Thank you for being the sponsor of tonight's show thus far. I appreciate it.
And we will all go read Aquinas. Thank you, Don Juan. We appreciate it.
We will indeed.
Crispy Richard, what do you all think about the exchange between iFi and Flow so far? Like, what's your take on it?
Oh, I've heard
Ladies
that.
first, of course.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard them argue before many and many times. I wanted to ask you guys that question about that lady that came in and said that it was part of the commandments for her to spread the word of Lord of God. That's not the part of, like, that's not the commandments that the 10 commandments that I follow. Is there some other subset of
It's
commandments?
generally Christian doctrine to spread the word. That's one of the implied commands we're given.
Well, she just said it's part of it's one of the commandments.
I mean, actually, it is explicitly stated on a couple occasions as well. But there's obviously a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. Obviously, you're not to go out and beat people over the head with a Bible. That's not going to convert anyone. But again, you're to be ready to give an answer at any time. So you can't just be like, I don't really want to talk about it. Find out yourself. Like that's not a Christian answer. So
I just wondered if there was something else, because I just know of the 10 commandments that that everybody knows, but that's all.
There was a New Testament, by the way, just FYI.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware.
And there's 613 Hebrew laws in the Old Testament, by the way.
And also, Christians aren't Jews, so we don't have to worry about Judaism. That law was fulfilled, so
God changed his mind.
God had pre-alpha religion, which was Judaism and Gentilism. And so before the final word was released, the religion 1.0, the commercial release, was Christianity. So now there's no more guessing, there's no more divisions, there's no more excuses. All the bugs got worked out. So
Tom, somebody
enjoy.
Catholics don't know
appealing about a religion that builds a hat in, because for us guys that start going into the bald, into the back of the skull here, there's something nice about that just being built in. Like, hey man, I got to wear this little cap. I'm not gonna lie, that there's something appealing about that.
That is nice, isn't it? It's very nice. I think it, and it's a good look. It's a nice, neat, cool look. I like it. The yarmulke, is that what you're talking about? The yarmulke?
And it's less interference with God. Now you got a clear signal going straight to your skull, so it makes you more holy.
Well,
I mean, it's better than a tinfoil hat. I mean, that's what I've been told. So,
but yeah, then you're
Don Juan. If I'm going to buy that fucking book, I expect more than a $2 super chat.
I bet, Flo, I left this up there. I bet he'll give you a hefty super chat if you come up with a copy of it, just ready, holding it up right to the camera there. I bet he'll bring it. Like, Don Juan has been yet to fail on the super chat front, so
I know.
I think you probably keep good to it.
Yeah, and he does it very nicely because he just peppers the chat with $1.99. With every question he has.
That's what I'm talking about. We need to get him on some of those Ike-sized donos.
So even though
he does it,
Body Odor already left, now we can make fun of him. So, Flo, what are your thoughts on the love deity? Does that sound like a compelling religion?
That remind me his position. I've heard it before, but
he's a love deist, in which he believes that love is sort of like this Gaia nature spirit that's not really like a person per se, and so there is no religion to follow. It's just more about knowing what love is and becoming one with love, and that's the final true answer to all this religion.
I think it's true in a sense, but I wouldn't say that it I believe that that we get created in God's image. I think that means I think that there is some truth actually in the Bible. I think that being created in God's image means in a creative capacity.
Good
And
job,
that,
Flo.
thank you. And that we co-create our reality, and what we give our attention to, it creates more of. And I think that love is a more pleasant one, and that people who focus on love are happier. People who focus on hate get more hate, and it ends up in their own destruction. So I would say that there is some truth to base take, but not exactly what I believe.
See, I
So-
think
so
Flo
he-
is coming back to. He will come back to.
This is
God.
not a Christian belief, and it's not
I
a new
always,
one of
I
mine.
know, but I think that way because you were baptized.
You're optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm getting further away from Christianity the
No,
more
you're
that
gonna come back.
Okay,
trust
fine.
me. Okay. Thank you for agreeing.
You're right.
Well, stick with the intelligent designer and see where that leads you, because again, you're not going to find it in Brahma or Allah or any of those other ones.
This is the mental schism we're having.
Well, don't
You
be
think that the
disrespectful.
answer is in one of these things that we have easily available. I don't think it is. I don't think we understand the answer.
I agree.
What do you
And
think?
I certainly don't think it's coming at us through an institution.
What do you think Christianity gets wrong about God?
Literally fucking everything. Like
A
there's,
all of
lot
it?
of stuff.
there's several different gods. Go, Richard. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I see Richard, and I haven't heard
For
from him yet, so I hope
instance, there is no Yod He Vav He anywhere in the Bible until the existence of Adam. Before that, it's Elohim. So obviously, the idea of an Eloach, a singular powerful being, was available to the Jews, and it's not there. And instead, they use the plural Elohim, and it verified in man and woman in our image, male and female. So unless you're going to say that your God is both male and female, which I don't know how you would justify some statement like that, then it has to mean only angels. It can't mean God.
Do they know the Hawk Tui girl?
I'm sure the angels are aware of all of us. But
I think the image. I think the image is sapience. It's not talking about physical parts.
I just meant with that, with the.
if
That's all.
if it's only emotional awareness, then why does the word not have anything to do with emotional awareness, but only has to do with like looking into a body of water at your own reflection, or the mirrors that they had at the time, which were poor.
Narcissist. Is that how you pronounce it?
Narcissist.
Oh, a narcissist is the practitioner, or the narcissist.
That looked in the body of water.
Yes, that's.
So the reason why I asked you, Flo, about the love deity was, let's take the Christian God out of the equation for now, and let's say we're contemplating, society and how to organize the rule of law and stuff like that. Since we have no idea what morality is, let's try ethics.
We do know
So
what morality is.
what is it? What is morality?
It's the same thing as ethics.
It's
They're the same
not.
thing.
It's the opposite of ethics.
No, it's not the.
This is why religion fucks up people's morality. Like, morality is not complicated, and there's a very practical reason for it. It's not until you introduce this arbitrary God's desires that people get confused as fuck and end up making terrible moral decisions because they get confused and lost.
So can you have morality without having religion, or without having God in your
1000%.
life?
A higher power, the highest power. Without the highest power, can you have morality?
1000%. People don't. I don't know why you rephrased it.
Okay, let's take God out of the equation. Now that's just all of us humans.
Let me explain what morality is to you, since you've been brainwashed and you've forgotten.
Okay, what is it?
Morality is the rules of society. Basically, it's like the laws of nature, but it's for the interactions of society. And you will have a weak society if people are immoral and betraying and backstabbing and harming the other people within the society.
What are the laws of nature?
If you're out on a desert island alone and there is no society around you, you cannot do something immoral because it will affect nobody.
So I can't lie even though there's no one around?
Correct. You can't lie. There's nobody to lie to. There's nobody to deceive.
I can lie. I can lie to myself.
You are
You can
lying to
say
yourself.
things that are untrue, but you can't believe them. You can't
Sure, I
believe something
can.
that's false.
So, you
can't
can be
believe
self-delusional.
something that's false that you know is false.
Sure, I can. You don't know what free will's capable of,
I mean,
good
he's doing
sir.
it right now.
I'm
And
doing
that
it
kind
right
of
now.
intent is necessary for lying.
Have you never heard of bad faith? I thought people use this phrase all the time. No human has ever been bad faith before.
I think you're stretching definitions and you know it.
Am I lying to you?
No.
You're kind of. You're being disingenuous.
I'm trying to get Flo's gears turning because he's like, wait a minute.
I don't know why
he
you're
almost
my gears turning. My gears aren't stuck.
So why does morality require another party present? When did that become the rule?
Well,
I'm
let's say
explaining
you
what
were by
morality is
yourself.
to you. You don't know what morality is. You just think it's what the book says.
And again, there's always the implied, God's omnipresent, so he's always there with you.
What is the purpose of morality?
For those who don't know what good and evil is, to know what good and evil is, so they don't have to derive it on their own and fail.
Interpersonal relationships.
It's laws. It's for those who don't know to know what the answers are. That's what morality is for.
Or why does it matter?
Because if you had to figure it out on yourself, you might get it wrong, and therefore may cause evil all your life.
Who cares if I get it wrong? What's the consequence?
God cares whether or not you get it wrong or right.
The answer why it matters is because God decided arbitrarily.
Exactly.
You have no understanding of the purpose.
I don't think you know what the word arbitrary means every time you mention God's laws and what that means, but that's not arbitrary, Flo. That's the most important reason why.
Well, if God made logic and God is not subject to logic, then it's perfectly fine if God is irrational. I don't see why that's a problem.
God can even make illogical morality. That's not a requirement of morality.
It is possible.
Just
it
what
is
God
conceivable.
happened to say.
So, for example, humans can.
Hold on. God said that the law is written on your heart. So even God says you already understand this.
That's for man to already have like a leg up in the discussion, because if we were just monkeys, we wouldn't even be able to conceive what good and evil are, even if it was explained to us.
I don't think that you can conceive. That's what I'm saying.
You can, because you already have that innate ability. You already have that.
I've heard you. We've gone through these moral exercises. I heard you say it's better off for a parent to let their child starve to death than it is for them to steal food for their child.
Correct.
I heard you say that.
What?
That is your morals are
That's
fucked.
wild that you
That's
said
wild.
that.
Hey, and I know Crispy has to bounce, so
Yeah,
kind of let
yeah.
her
Later.
get a
Thank
parting
you
thought
guys
in
so
here before
much,
she
and
goes.
thank you for listening to my babble. I appreciate you guys. I didn't want to interrupt, and but thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you, Crispy. Don't be
Later.
a stranger.
Okay, I won't. Bye
All
bye.
right, later.
So there is a perfect example of something that sounds illogical, but doesn't matter because it's the moral answer. So again, God didn't say, if you come up with a good reason to break my rules, then go ahead. He said, just don't break the rules ever, period, for any reason.
No, God didn't tell you shit.
Yeah, he did. He said,
Did
don't
not-
steal, don't kill, don't
Where'd you
lie.
Who gave you your first Bible?
Some dude.
Okay, exactly.
Well, you won that argument, Flo. I
I mean, God didn't
can't
tell
rebut
you
that.
shit. My point. God didn't say a fucking thing to you.
What if God told some other dude, and then some other dude told that other dude, and they wrote it down? Would that be good enough?
I would think if you have faith, you would believe that God would tell you. And in fact, he says so in the book, right? He says he writes it on your heart. He's told you that he told you.
He told me that.
Have faith in God. That's why you
That's-
trust man.
That's why I can intuitively figure out that some things are nice and bad. Like killing is probably wrong. I don't have to read a book to figure that out. I already knew that instinctively, and so that's the part written on your heart.
What is it about that you think would cause you to know instinctively that's the case? Might it be because it causes harm to somebody else?
Possibly, but you have to define harm, and then you have to figure out whether or not that's the overriding rule. Because again, you causing harm to your child by not feeding them, by stealing from your neighbor, seems to strike you on all the wrong chords. You're like, this doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
No, yeah,
My logic says veto.
It's actually appalling. Your ethics are appalling. Your morals, whatever you want to call them.
Would you be willing to kill to feed your child, by the way, Flo? Just curious.
I would absolutely. I'd kill all of you to feed my child. If I needed
Okay.
to. Absolutely.
There you go. And see, there's your ethics versus God's morality.
You wouldn't kill or you wouldn't steal to feed yours. That's fucked off.
I would not endanger my eternal soul just to temporarily cause my child some comfort. That's true.
That way.
Because priorities.
You are more scared.
Go ahead, Flo. And then I want to let Denizen up.
You're more
Denizen. Oh, this is going to get wild.
You're more scared of the ghost stories you've been indoctrinated into than you are for the well-being of your child.
You're more afraid.
Why I don't like religion.
You're more afraid of approaching God in honest terms.
Let me push back in a different way before Denizen comes up. Do you think that God would want you to provide for your children?
Yes.
So if that meant having to steal to provide for your children, that would be not in accordance with his
correct
ordained.
So even if it was your failure is the cause of that terrible thing to happen, that's on your head. And so
let's go with the proverbial apocalyptic situation.
Okay.
A box of food in a car. You don't know whose it is, but you know it's not yours. You're going to take that box of food out of the car to feed your children. You probably stole it from somebody. You can't know that you stole it from somebody. It may be there, but there's a chance that you stole it from somebody. Have you broken a moral, ethical, biblical principle by taking that food that you may have potentially stolen?
You'll find out on the day of judgment. You can always roll those dice and hope for the best, but
I'd actually like to answer that as well, if that's
because
all right.
I know it's not mine. I know it's not mine, right? I know it's not mine because I didn't procure it in any sort of way. I found it. And then there's and don't like I'll probably F this up a little bit, but we talk about God providing everything that you should need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, was God providing what you needed, or was that you stealing from somebody else? And I'm just kind of like dipping my toe into this moral question a bit, I guess.
That's why God gave us brains, because it's not always a clear, easy answer. Sometimes you have to stop and think about it. Like, wait a minute, does this involve more complicated thoughts? And so that's that's what religion is. You just nailed religion right on the head. If it was just simple and easy, it would be like science, where we could just be like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2. This is easy. Religion is like, okay, here's a set of moral codes, which at many times in your life will be illogical to you. You won't understand why you're doing this, other than God told you to do it.
You don't understand why you're doing it. A man told you to read this book. Do you
know
the separation there is between God and you in this situation?
5 minutes ago.
You missed the point, Flo. So again, sometimes God will give you a command that you can't find the logical conclusion of why he told you to do that thing.
I'm still trying to figure out why you think that these are God's commands to you.
That's a whole separate debate. But anyways, presuming we went through the steps to get to the point where we're convinced that it's God's law, now is it logical? Yes or no? And sometimes it's not. That's the point we're currently talking about.
I want to hear Richard. He might.
Go ahead,
Richard. I'll bring up Denizen while you're going, and then I'll kind of pitch it to him. So, Richard, go ahead.
Okay, so I find it very interesting how grammar works and how much of the English language is actually adopted from other grammatical forms. And actually, Hebrew is one of those we took a lot from. So I'd like to point out or ask you to notice something. There's nothing grammatically wrong with me saying, primal, thou shalt not kick me off my channel. Okay? Now what did I mean by thou shalt not kick me off my channel?
You can't do it.
You can't do it meaning what?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it means I won't do it. I won't click the button to kick you off the channel, I guess.
Okay, now, well, no. You got it wrong. You won't kick me off my channel.
Oh, okay.
Now,
So
if I said the opposite, if I said primal, thou shalt not kick me off your channel, what am I saying?
I can't kick you off my channel.
But is that true? Are you able to?
Well, I'm able to, but I shall not do it.
So one is I'm trying to compel you, right?
Right. I'll make a choice to not do it versus I can't or have the ability.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other one is a declaration of your inability. You literally can't kick me off my channel. Now take that problem right there and apply it to the text of the Bible in an internal critique. God owns everything. Thou shalt not steal.
But then interject free will.
Hold on. You're jumping ahead.
Yeah.
You're jumping ahead and you're missing it. Not to insult you in any way.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so if God owns everything, in order for you to steal from God, you'd have to take something off the planet somehow.
Right.
And I'm not even sure that would help you.
Right.
Okay, so if it's a declaration of inability, thou shalt not steal, because everything's his. Thou shalt not kill, because he can restore life, etc., etc., etc. We've locked into this one way of thinking about this and not considered the rest of the text in comparison. That's my point.
Yeah, I think it's a compelling argument. All right, open it up. Kind of, I had brought up a couple people, but it looks like Denizen fell off. But Ava, welcome. Beans, welcome. I appreciate you all coming up.
Thank you.
You might want to jump in now before we get going again.
You got something, let it rip, because I feel like we're gonna get going here. I was gonna wrap it up, but we keep digging into deeper things, so I'll kind of.
Oh, by the way, most of you already believe in my God. You just may not know it.
And I think that's a really compelling thing, because I've always had a bit of the mindset of, maybe we all believe in a somewhat similar thing, but we call it something different. I think that there's an interesting thought process to, hey, do all these concepts all link into the same thing, and we're kind of going in the same direction, but we haven't identified yet? I don't know.
Because of necessary biology and what human beings actually need, yes, there's commonality.
And before anyone calls it love, be sure you define love before you claim that one.
Well, Based will tell us that it's a God of love, right? Like, anyway.
I wish he would tell me about his God, because he keeps selling me on it. But when I ask for details, he's like, all you need is love.
How I feel.
I could tell you everything about my God if you want to know.
Shut the fuck up.
He's got blue eyes and he likes long walks on the beach.
Hey, and I don't know, but I appreciate you. I don't even remember what I ate for breakfast this morning. So if I said something accurate, then let it rip. Man. Let it
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even remember exactly. I've been waiting for a minute to come up here. But dude, something that I-Fi said. Oh yeah, it was like, that's why God gave us brains. And I'm like, what if it was someone with Down syndrome?
I believe that falls under the child category, which is not held accountable. So I think that's between them and God.
Really low IQ, but they're not technically.
Like votes Democrat? Like, give me an example. What are you talking about?
Like sub 90.
Yeah, votes Democrat. So, yeah, that's no excuse, because, again, God gave us brains. If you choose not to use them, that's your fault, not his, but,
Yeah, but you don't really have, like, a lot of discernment. If that's if you're only going up to 90.
I think you have enough. In the church I used to go to, they made a very clear point that, because one of the topics of debate was the age of accountability, and so that's still a hot topic, by the way. That'll never be settled. But anyways, the general consensus is that, like, once children reach the age where they have like reading comprehension, those are the early signs of accountability, because when they can explain to you the concept that they're reading and understand it in themselves and make that free will choice, that's where the accountability starts to kick in. So it's actually pretty young, but a lot of people think you don't really become accountable till you're like an adult, like you're 18 years old or something like that. But most humans are pretty accountable by then. They know what they're doing.
No, not necessarily.
So when you were 17 years old, you didn't know that killing people was evil or anything like that? Or stealing?
Honestly, dude, when I was 17,
were evil to eat?
I did not have a good moral compass. I was still pretty sociopathic. Your brain isn't fully developed until you're 25.
you don't have to be fully developed in order just to have like free will and accountability.
Dude, for the longest time, I thought being like a sociopath or a psychopath was like the way to win in life, and I would like wish that I was one because like, oh, they're successful in business and they have charisma and stuff, which is like the most retarded line of thinking.
So you might.
But I thought that. And maybe I'm a 90 IQ too. Maybe that. But
You really don't need a high.
Right. You might not be willing to accept this, right? But I think the people who move the way that you say you were moving, I think that's more of programming than it has anything to do with your ability to be accountable. Right. I think that's the point that he was making, is that by a certain age, like let's say and I'm gonna go even younger than that. I'm gonna say you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you go to the store and you steal something. Guess what? You're trying to get away with it. You're not just walking in the store, grabbing something off the shelf and walking away like a 1-year-old would do. By 5, 6, 7, you're grabbing it. You're looking around to see if anybody is seeing you. You're putting it in your pocket. You're trying to get away with it. So that means that you know it's wrong.
And that's why it's such a hotly debated topic, because some people will say as early as like he just said, the general consensus is like around middle school is when children start to develop the ability to fully comprehend and understand the consequences of their actions, and therefore can make individual free will choices, as opposed to most children, just follow their parents' example, don't think for themselves or whatever. Even
they're just people larvae.
Yeah. And so that's why you have people say, even up until like adult age, like 18, 20 years old, they're not really accountable until that age. And there probably is a good argument for modern society. I mean, a lot of modern adults that are like 30 years old that think like little 4-year-old children, I would say is a hard sell, because it's hard to convince me that those are fully accountable adults. But I don't know. It's up to y'all.
Yeah, well, I mean, my point isn't that it's like, oh, I had no idea that murder was wrong, like, obviously, but then there are gray areas where people don't have fully developed, like, empathy or cognitive abilities.
But if morality only comes from God's commands in the Bible, then there should be no reason why it's more obvious that you don't murder than it is that you don't eat meat on Fridays or whatever.
Besides, when it comes to this guilt, I find, and you know me, I'm not coming at you. I'm just
come at me, bro. I'm cool.
Argument. Well, I'm not interested in just coming at a person.
That's okay. It won't hurt my feelings.
In you.
Go ahead.
How do you exegete my people perish for lack of understanding?
Ooh.
That gets into the problem of ignorance. So a lot of humans try to plead ignorance to God and saying,
Wait. Understanding and ignorance are unrelated topics.
The lack of understanding is different than ignorance.
Okay, so there's things you don't know at all, and you can't know them because you don't know they exist. Fine.
Are you saying incapable of knowing? Incapable of knowing? Is that what you're trying to phrase?
Yes, there are certain things you're unfamiliar in as far as their existence. You literally can't go find out about them. You don't know they exist.
Like God.
Okay, but that would be an example of ignorance. Fine. But I'm asking about the biblical verse that reads, "My people perish for lack of understanding," which is you're aware of the thing and it's passing you by.
Oh yeah, I always try to separate stupidity from ignorance, because again, there's a difference between knowing what God's word is and just rejecting it, as opposed to just not knowing what God said. Period. And so I was curious which one you were asking about, but I'm not familiar with that verse. I'm not familiar with that verse right off the top of my head. I would need to know the context of it.
To be fair, get back to me sometime.
It sounds like, again, many times people will object to God saying, but we didn't know X, Y, Z. How could you hold us accountable for these things? And so
Bible verses to back that up, that a person, if they're completely ignorant of the truth of the thing, will be judged on their actions during their life.
That's why God reminds humans time and again that, it depends on the context. So some humans were born before the word was preached. And so how would they know what God wants? And so some people were born aside from God's word. The Gentiles knew of the Jews, but didn't know why they had to follow certain rules or whatever. And so,
or what rules they were following. Yeah.
And so, I always think in context of the gospel. All men are accountable to the gospel. Period. There are no Jews or Gentiles, and there is no ignorance. There's no, oh well, God, I heard about this Christianity thing, but I didn't look into it, so you can't hold me accountable for it. So. It's one of those reminders that you can't fool God into thinking that you can just plead the fifth or ignorance, and he'll be like, oh well, I have to let you into heaven now because you didn't take the time to go pick up a Bible, so I can't hold you accountable for it.
Dichotomy that doesn't necessarily exist. What if I were an agnostic or an anti-theist or anything in between, and I just heard a crappy doctrine from a crappy Christian who couldn't rationalize anything and said everything based on faith, and it turned me off?
Then does that mean that you are free from the burden of having to check the original source yourself just because you didn't like his interpretation of it?
Yeah,
Let me put it this way. I'm not looking into perpetual motion machines because I believe they can't exist.
What if I said I'm an American?
I should go look into perpetual motion machines?
Yeah, you should look into anything that is important enough to concern your eternal soul. And so
I'm using a gentle example, and of course it's going to fail at some point. But just the same, if a person is convinced by their experience and has rationally found that they should not value some certain thing, and they have, like, I don't know, a job. They don't have a just infinite amount of time to go look into things that are nonsensical.
We all have roughly the same amount of time and ability to seek the truth. And so here's a quick analogy.
Choose which ones you look into, because there's so much information out there that can be misinformation.
You should definitely set priorities on which information is more important than others. I wouldn't worry about reading Kardashian books or anything like that to find the one true God or anything. But back to your ignorance analogy. So what if I was a citizen of America, and some police officer came up to me and said, "You're breaking XYZ law," and I said, "I'm not aware of American laws because one time I talked to an American and he was."
You just assumed objectivity. You can't do that in your argument.
Can I finish my analogy before you criticize it?
You assumed objectivity, and you can stop.
What do you mean by that, assumed objectivity?
I didn't even finish the analogy.
I know, but you're comparing the Bible to knowable laws. You're assuming the Bible is correct, and you're assuming the laws are correct.
Okay, are the laws of God written down for man to read, like the Constitution is?
That's not the right question.
Or your local codes, are those written down for man to read?
Yes, they exist. There are thousands, sometimes thousands.
Okay, can I finish the analogy before you complain about it? So, anyways, if I said I didn't bother to read the Constitution or any of the silly American laws because one time I met an American and he didn't know anything about American law and he was retarded and said stupid stuff, so I just dismissed all of anything he was talking about. So I'm not held to any of those laws. Is that a good reason?
Analogy fails.
Okay, go ahead.
Instead of retarded person who knows nothing, you'd have to be talking about the police officer's ignorance. Because what I said was...
What if the police officer was wrong?
Studies the Bible and just says dumb stuff.
What if it was a police officer that should know the law and still says dumb stuff and gets it wrong? Does that mean you shouldn't read the law?
Okay, now that was a fair comparison. Now we've gotten somewhere.
Okay, let's go with that one.
Okay, but what if I ran into 20 officers, one right after the other?
Then you're in Chicago.
Well, maybe so, but it happens to agnostics in their familiarity with Christians all the time.
So this gets back to the psychology question, Primal. Do you see how many people reject Christianity because they found bad examples of Christians? Like Christians that don't know what they're talking about.
Do you really think that's the majority, though?
I would agree. Yeah, that is the majority. I agree with his point.
I think a lot of
majority
people,
of people who reject it
as a Christian. I think a lot of Christians do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that the majority of people who reject it because they found bad ones. I think the majority of people who reject it because it doesn't make sense to them. It becomes illogical. It's like Santa Claus, right? It's like the fairy godmother, the tooth fairy.
Like if the
At
police
some
officer
point, it stops
constantly
making sense.
contradicted himself, right, Beans?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think the burden of quote unquote as a Christian person, I'll say this. I think the burden of proof is placed upon me to convince you that my idea is the way. And if I don't do a compelling job of doing that, then I have failed in my quote unquote duty. I think that's the burden of proof is kind of with me.
That
That's
intellectual honesty is so refreshing.
Yeah.
Yes, but it is intellectually honest, but at the same time, I don't know what word to use to describe it right here, but I'll say this, Primal. I think that it's based on the fact that that's also your belief.
Yeah,
right?
and that's
Because
hard. That's hard to
that-
like
yeah.
and that's hard to portray like, hey, how do I make you believe what I believe? I don't have a great way of doing that. I can say here's what I think and here's the reasons why. But
Right.
the hard part at the end of the day is I'm trying to get like if I'm trying to bring you in, I can give you my best pitch, but I can't make you believe something, especially if it's going to be, you'll have like the quote unquote, hey, sell me on your imaginary sky daddy. And I'm
Right.
going to have to come to a point where intellectually I can't show you like, here's the thing. I
Right.
can't give you like, here's the proof. Like
Mhm.
you have to take a little bit of a leap. And if I can't get you to do that, then I've kind of failed in my duty. That's how I see it.
And that's very and like he said, the intellectual honesty is very refreshing, because one of the things that I see a lot of people, theists, get frustrated with when they're trying to convince you is that when you don't accept when you ask them, well, how do you know God is real? Well, it's my experience. Well, how does your experience convince me? Right. I know,
Mr.
I know
Beans, I'd like
water
to
is
push
wet
back on
because
that.
I know water is wet because if you throw it on me, I can feel that it's wet. You don't have the ability to do the same thing with your belief. You see?
Right. How do I make you feel or believe something that I had a firsthand experience in? I can't make you have the same firsthand experience I had unless I can replicate that somehow. And it comes to these matters of faith. How do we ever replicate some of these things? It's very nebulous in my opinion.
This is how Christians argue. This right here.
The plug is plugged in, so believe that the plug is plugged in.
We know the Bible's real because it says so in the Bible.
See, the electricity is just going to last forever in that loop. That's amazing. You've invented something, Mr. Beans. I'd like to push back on you with the value of anecdotal stories, because I don't believe that human beings, even if some human beings tend toward, and you might be the exception, but I doubt it. Some people tend more toward logic. Some people tend more toward emotion, but just the same, none of us are 100% either one. So if you don't have a reason why a logical argument, even if it necessarily follows and must be true, a person might reject it just because they don't see a value in it. Let me give a for instance. My contention is that people who assign value to truths and accept truths allow themselves a position of less frustration, thereby more opportunity for happiness. But they don't accept truths based on whether or not the thing is true, but whether or not they'll be happy.
Yeah, I think if I was to accept that logic, I would have to put that, I would have to make it age-based, right? Because I haven't been making decisions on what I accept that way for a very long time. But I will admit that I am different, right?
You tend toward logic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even as a kid, right? So when I was a kid, there's this thing in the I don't know about in everybody else's background, but in the Black community, there was this thing called talking back, right? It would usually get you hit in the mouth, right? Yeah, well, I did a whole lot of that, right? And it was because I'm like, yo, I'm thinking this through. Like, no, you're the adult, I'm the child, but I'm not wrong here. You are, right? And so I never could turn it off.
It's because you're petty as fuck. Let's
No, I mean, it's just like, no,
actually,
right
I
is
had the
right
same
and wrong
problem in
is
school.
wrong. Right is right and wrong is wrong. So when I'm like, I'll give you an example real quick, Heaven. So I knew that I wasn't being parented right. And the reason why I knew this is because I was able to experience other people parenting when I go to my cousin's house, when I go to my friend's house. I'm seeing how other kids' moms are treating them. I'm seeing how other kids' fathers are treating them. And then I'm juxtaposing that to how I'm being treated. And I'm like, yeah, nah, this ain't right. These kids are bad as hell. I'm not even bad like them. And they still got everything they want, hugged on, loved on. I'm coming home to all this yelling, screaming. This isn't right. Right. So what did I get? I didn't get hurt. I got ostracized. Right. Even became homeless as a child because of talking back. You see what I'm saying? So for me, I haven't made the decision to like something or not like something, but accept something based on the fact that it'll make me feel better for a very, 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 very long time, maybe 6-7 years old.
But you also recognize you're an exception in that venue, in that particular.
I don't know. And that's what I'm saying. I won't argue it because I have no way to quantify it. But I don't know. I think if I had to assign that, I probably would assign it to women. But I don't know if I would assign it to men. I don't know if men.
I think men are less likely to declare it, but I think it's still true.
Yeah. I just think men probably are less likely to accept the validity of something based on the fact that it'll feel good to do it. Right. I think most that's like an ugly guy. And you see the ugly guy who is getting all the hot girls. You're like, man, why is he doing that? You don't realize it's just his confidence and his willingness to accept the truth. I'm ugly, but I'm going to play on all these other things that I got going for me. I'm witty, I'm funny, my body is in shape, whatever else I got going on for me, right? He accepts the truth of his ugliness, but he doesn't accept it because it makes him feel better. You see what I'm saying? But to your point, you saying that it's probably the majority, maybe it is.
Yeah. Sorry for the tangent.
No, it's a great topic. I think this has just been a great conversation overall. I do want to say I'm going to be kind of wrapping this up here, but if you want to see continuation of this conversation, I know Flo is going to be opening up his show in just a moment here. So I encourage everybody. Warning? What's that?
Was that my 2-minute warning?
I guess I figure we'll kind of like put a bow on this little portion of it, but I want everybody, if you aren't already on Flo's channel, to go over and check out Flo. He's going to be continuing the conversation. Beans, I know you have a podcast. Go check out my man Beans. Check out all his great content. I know iFi's got a channel. Go check out his content. Demolish, do you have a channel as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead and plug yourself, man. Like, let's hear about it.
Okay. I was an atheist until age 42, at which time I was shown a reading frame which justifies all ancient religions in amongst themselves and against reality, requiring no defeat or warping of physics. It's actually really interesting that all of these stories in their original forms, in their original words, support the argument. And that's pretty much all I argue about.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. It was really nice to meet you and have some dialogue. I appreciate it. Beans, I appreciate you coming up. iFi, I appreciate you. Flow State.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Any kind of parting thoughts before I kind of pitch this over to Flo's channel? I want everybody to get over there and keep the conversation going. I just got to get to bed is all.
Yeah, ditto. My outro is going to be one parting thought was I noticed that a lot of people reject religion not because they don't agree that your claim is true. They can't find out what's in it for them. And so when you don't give them a convincing answer of like what you have to offer them.
You better be coming over to my channel after that fucking nonsense.
I mean, it's past my bedtime, but okay, I'll come over for a couple of minutes. But anyways, that's more kind of back to the psychology of the religious people is that, again, it's not so much about like logic and truth claims. It's more about like what are you offering them, and so sometimes your sales pitch isn't very convincing. So they're just like, nah, not worth it. Bye, and that's the end of it. So
yeah, it makes sense. Beans,
all right. Thanks.
And parting thoughts kind of before heading over to Flo's?
Yeah, nothing on religion. I would just say that I appreciate the conversation that I just so happen to fall into. I just woke up not too long ago, so I'm gonna be up. I'm definitely headed over to Flow. But definitely I subscribe, man. And I hope to catch more of you. I hope to be on Damn, that was crazy to say that out loud.
Isn't that funny how that goes?
Yeah. But no, I hope to see more of your shows and join more panels with you. I love having conversations with thinking people. Shout out to my man Demolish. Can't wait for us to do a show together, man. And your voice is crazy amazing, bro. Like Demolish got the best podcasting voice ever.
He's got that
I got a
announcer
face for
voice,
radio
man.
too. Yeah, it really was.
That's legit.
All right, see you guys in a minute.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Beans. Demolish, appreciate you. Everybody that
I'm
came
around
by,
to say one
you.
more thing.
Yeah, go for it, man.
One
Go for
last thing.
Yep.
If you love Primal's content, why aren't you subscribed? If you hate it, man, nurture that. Enjoy the hate. Subscribe so you can hate somebody that you don't actually know and ain't got to deal with you. And if you're indifferent about it, why not just subscribe and then hit no notifications? Why not? Thanks a lot for letting me on your show.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, hit one of those buttons. Either it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, or you don't want to F and see me anymore. Any of those buttons works. It's all engagement. So I appreciate everybody coming by. Thank you for the great conversation to all the great panelists. Thank you, Don Juan, for being the sponsor of the show. Really appreciate all you just popping by on your Sunday evening. So we'll do this again real soon. And until then, go check out the rest of the show over on Flow State. Thanks again. I'll see you again. Bye.